This is Atomic Shinobi and today I am going to narrate first part of What If Naruto Became a Devil Against His Will. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
A quiet chuckle echoed through the room. Listening to it was also intoxicating. It was difficult to accept that he was with them in this room. A lovely girl's gentle smile, she said, "It's almost time." Unfortunately, Kiba sat next to Issei Hyodo, who was seated in the sofa's corner, rather than any of the other girls in the room. They all took seats on the love seat or the other big couch. Between them is a big coffee table with a variety of drinks or a few lunchboxes. Beautiful red-haired Rias Gremory turned to face her friend. She scowled and sighed. She wore a short school skirt over her hands. She looked in her friend's direction. He will be here. Along with having one of the largest busts in the school, her hair was one of her most distinctive features. Issei joined the club, but she remained aloof. Nothing had changed, but his dreams now seemed much closer. His greatest wish was to see her gorgeous breasts. He watched as they were finally freed from their restraints while still wearing a lacy bra. However, he thought he should continue to concentrate on the issue at hand and the jitters he was experiencing at the moment. However, it did help to think about his favorite topic. To aid their king in a raiding game, they had all assembled here. Rias, lucky asshole, was engaged to Riser Phoenix, a bastard. They were supposed to assist Rias in getting out of that situation. As the clock continued to strike, tense minutes went by. A person emerged as a magical circle materialized. She was a gorgeous woman with gray hair who was disguised as a maid. She caused his heart to beat a bit more quickly and started something else. "Good morning, are you all prepared for the raiding game?" replied Grafia. She bowed. "Almost," Rias said, keeping an eye on the door. "We're just missing one more." "Who? What?" Issei questioned. He believed that everyone in this room was involved. The naive Asia, the adorable Kaneko, and the lovely Akeno. Was there one more person left? Who was it? Unless she had brought another one at the last minute, no one else had trained with them. Rias clawed at her skirts more and more as time went on. Her gaze kept flitting from the door to the clock. Rias repeated, more to herself than to anyone else, "He will be here." Issei whispered his words as he leaned in Kiba's direction. Who else are we waiting for?" Kiba gazed, a frown forming on his face. "Whoever it was didn't make me feel good," he spat, "the other unhelpful knight." Akeno questioned, "Why do you seem so sure? You really didn't do that, did you? I think it's been established that it would only work against you." In order to draw attention to her already striking bust, Rias crossed her arms and pursed her lips. No other methods would entice him. What were the methods used for that? That alone sent Issei's mind into overdrive. Issei turned the others' attention to him and interrupted, saying, "Wait, who are we talking about?" His inquiry about the identity of the mystery knight was cut off once more. The room was filled with another enchanted circle. Rias gasped out loud. Even Akeno was upset this time, to think he wouldn't come. This time, Riser was by himself. His mere presence made the room seem pretentious. There was a smug grin on his face. "Rias, my dear, let us get this day over with so you may finally be my wife." Grafia chose to step in before Issei or anyone else could speak. "Now, Lady Rias, if you and your peerage are prepared, then we will proceed to the destination of the raiding game." Rias gave the door one last glance, as though he wanted it to open. "My lady?" She didn't say anything, but then her shoulders dropped. "Yes, I suppose we are ready." The door opened and the handle rattled as if on command. The intrusion caught everyone's attention. The man was someone Issei knew well, and he was dressed in the school uniform. Issei recognized the burnt orange headphones he wore as being of a high-end brand. He had a stern expression on his face and furrowed brows. His expression was always mean. "There," Rias sighed in relief, "now nearly my entire peerage is present." The new arrival scowled and said, "Not like I had much choice." He shifted his weight and crossed his arms. Naruto Uzumaki was the last person to cross Issei's mind when she was trying to figure out who the knight was. The bandaged arm, the whisker scars, and the icy blue eyes. Not to mention the frown that never goes away. His top buttons were always unbuttoned, and his tie was never made. Uzumaki appeared even more distant because of his headphones. The people of the school also bestowed titles upon him in recognition of his numerous actions. The bad boy. Delinquent. A jerk. Or the favorite of Issei. Kiba's mirror alter ego. Kiba Dark. It was known that Uzumaki did not like that last one, but regrettably, it did not stick. For an unidentified reason, Issei cried out to the world about injustice. He was dug up by some of the Kuo Academy ladies. Furthermore, there was discussion about the mystery of what was hidden beneath the bandages covering his right arm. So, my love, your peerage has grown little. Judging by your efforts, you truly wish to marry me. Do not call me that. I prefer quality over quantity at any rate, Rias responded. Riser answered, then I shall demonstrate both. Oh, Naruto chose to pay attention. So, this is what is happening. I think I'm actually glad I came. Issei grinned and nearly nodded before noticing Rias's deceived expression. Then he recalled how Naruto came to be famous. With black clouds that appeared to be moving more quickly than usual, the sky was a deep red. This was their territory. It was the devil's and theirs alone. This was his first time in their dimension, he thought as he inhaled deeply. He whispered to no one, I'm not even supposed to be here. They looked like anyone else, but they called themselves devils. Their wings were the only difference. Angels also had wings, but they were different colors. How peculiar. No, during his life, Naruto encountered many odd things. In his own dimension, the physical oddities included monstrous looking and repulsive people. He became conscious of his own suffering when the subject of devils came up. It was one of Rias' devils. He let out a long sigh. Being a devil, he also had wings, but they served no purpose because he was already able to fly without them. In his headphones, he listened to the music. It was a companion in these strange dimensions, and Naruto had to acknowledge that there was a lot of music here, very different from the music back home. The other, where gossip seemed to be the norm in the schoolyard. Uzumaki, are you listening? Uzumaki, funny. Naruto glanced at the gathered group while wearing the headphones around his neck. That week, he had witnessed some training, and he was genuinely unsure of how to react to it. He had no idea how powerful anyone was in this place. Naruto answered, not even a little bit no, although it was a lie, it produced the desired response. Rias expressed some incredulity along with a hint of rage. Byakuno. Irritation and laughter. With the exception of Issei, who was perplexed, the others glared at him. Nevertheless, he could see how devoted they were to Rias. Everyone was ready to fight to the death. She was viewed as a friend by all. Was it as a master instead? Naruto took a quick look at the battlefield of the small raiding game he had been forced to play. The schoolyard was hell. Rias questioned, you haven't been listening to the plan? The plan wasn't very good. If she hated this as much as she claimed to, did she really intend to sit back? She ought to assume total command. Fight to the death to get out of this situation. To him, it only mentioned her meaningless statements. If he forfeited right away, he would want to see the expression on her face more than anything else. If he weren't present to observe, it probably wouldn't be worth it because looking through a device lacked intimacy. I have the best seats in the house. I plan on taking it all in. Issei said, why you, not gonna help? Naruto gave him a quick look. He winced. His intention was not even to intimidate. Kaneko said, Naruto didn't train with us. The most self-evident of claims. Issei inquired, how long has he been a part of the peerage? I'm right here, you know. The least you can do is ask me yourself, said Naruto. Issei's jaw dropped and his eyes widened, and it was some time before the school started. It was evident to Naruto that he was asking some questions. All this time, where had he been? Among other things, Naruto didn't want to play 20 questions or bother himself with any of them. The rating game will begin in 1 minute. Rias Gremory vs Riser Phoenix. Naruto took in the scenery. With the exception of the shrubbery and minor details like the blinders in the rooms and the hues of each set of walls and windows, the school was an exact replica. It made sense to fight on familiar territory, he had to admit. Reluctantly. The rating game states that no one would be killed and that they would all end up in good hands. One of the blonde girls who was standing next to Issei said, why you won't help us? Another newcomer under Rias, someone he had never seen before? It surprised Naruto that the pervert didn't worry her in the least. Nevertheless, this girl's wide eyes, which were somehow filled with betrayal, gave the impression that she was incredibly innocent. All right. In some ways, he felt guilty for being the reason behind that. But he wasn't going to allow any dejected eyes to entice him into this. No, the naive girl and Rias exchanged 2 dejected glances. The others scowled and appeared disheartened. He didn't particularly like those looks, but he did like the little pleasure they gave him. I won't be helping Rias because she's not my friend, not at all. His voice rumbled in his ear as Kurama stirred inside. This is going to be so predictable it makes me sleepy. He answered, what are you talking about? Don't mind me. I think I'll reminisce about a few of these one day. Naruto answered, go back to sleep you ass. Smart move, I have to save my brain cells for until you smarten up. Do you even have any brain cells? You're made of chakra. Kurama remained silent after saying, meh. Kurama would probably have noticed, but Naruto did not look in the seal. For a long time, this was the only noteworthy event. He became aware that his thoughts were on the conversation as he blinked. Asshole, said Kaneko. He was completely oblivious to the brief conversation he had just had with his fluffy but enormous friend. Naruto muttered, okay, unwanted and terrible, the school seemed to love their nicknames. Another name existed as well, the mere thought of it made him furious. There was another announcement, the rating game will now begin. The arena reverberated with the voice. However, at the time of the call, nobody moved. Everyone's eyes were on Rias. She winced. She glared at him as a word escaped her lips. Her hesitation likely affected the others, and he scoffed. Start the plan without Uzumaki. It took a moment for the others to even start doing as she said. They appeared energized just a moment ago, but as they drew away, he saw that their enthusiasm had diminished. For the simple reason that he spoke to them. The sounds of battle soon became more serious. Lights flared in the air as explosions echoed and rang. Glass breaking and walls collapsing. A few directives are being issued. Then he followed Rias out for a walk. He tilted his head, staring back at Rias as he peered at him. Something on my face? I was only doing what I thought was right, Rias replied. Only after against my own wishes. So, this is what you've been preparing for. You know, I might have forgiven you if it was something important. Her response was, it is important. He chose to elaborate on the question that was beginning to take shape. To you. But there's really nothing more, he replied. Yet, now, I only feel only more. He tightened his jaw. He remembered that nearly unfathomable sensation. It's not what you think, you were dying. I won't lie and say what you had influenced me a bit, but I couldn't let someone die right before me. In place of everything else she had said, a real explanation, turning up the volume on his headphones, he sneered at her. The minutes went by with neither of them saying anything else. You do know that all the others will think you're protecting me? He inquired. Other than your peerage, you mean? She swept a lock of hair behind her ear and nodded. Oh well. Once everyone is down, I do intend on forfeiting. You can't be that cruel. He heard pawns, other small fry, and those of Riser's peerage going down. It was about chess, but he still didn't understand it. He did learn that all of Ria's pawns were taken by Issei. What was the point of him being a knight? He didn't know much about this system. Someone wasn't even attempting to be stealthy when they ran at him at full speed. Quick enough to bring them closer. They attacked one moment, and he kicked her through multiple walls the next. A retirement announcement. At that moment, he became aware of his actions. He scowled and put his foot down. Ah, damn it, I didn't really mean to do that. Rias merely gazed at him. It was instinct, think nothing of it. He heard the school's walls collapsing and saw more devastation while he watched the devils running around. Flying around, devils threw colorful techniques. When it came to bombs, one devil spit. 2 weeks isn't enough to teach someone how to fight well, he murmured. Issei isn't that skilled. Looking out at the battlefield, Rias gazed. Are you just going to stand by and let this happen? I'm being forced into marrying him. This isn't my choice. Naruto gave her a fierce look. This is about choice now. What about mine? If I was going to die there, then it was going to be my choice, but you took that away. As if I die anyway. Rias Grammari's queen has been eliminated. He heard the panicked gasp even though she turned away. Rias started to move, and he followed her. He did hear additional casualties added to the list, though. Riser Pfennig's 3 pawns and rook have been eliminated. She walked with a bounce in her step and her head held slightly higher. To avoid noticing her positive attitude, Naruto chose to move slightly ahead of her. He put on his headphones and began to play music. Fortunately, when her rook lost, it was deflated. Naruto put on his headphones and turned up the music to drown out the announcements. As a result, he fulfilled his promise. Observe. He saw Rias go up against Riser. Issei's dress break somehow worked, and I watched as the naive girl came back. Well, at least it was amusing. He also had a chance to see the girl's underwear. Still, something didn't feel quite right. The removal of every other component. When Issei arrived on the scene, she saw Rias give up her bishop piece in order to keep her safe. Prior to him, the knight, the great king Rias, and the pawn Issei, Riser's bishop and queen remained. As he watched the pervert battle Riser, Naruto let out a sigh. Fighting would be an overly optimistic term, he thought. They all appeared to have received little benefit from the training they had received. Issei was simply being completely overrun. He was outclassed, even though he was still standing and throwing punches. The fact that he would lose was painfully obvious. In spite of it, he persisted. In hand.to hand combat, Riser was more proficient and stronger. Neither did Riser bother to discard any of his fire techniques. He wanted to show off his superiority over Issei. Rias's uselessness went unnoticed by Naruto, but what would happen when this was over? Naruto remarked, "Rias, you're pathetic." Her eyes were glassy and wide as her pretty little red head looked at him. "And what do you think you're doing?" she asked, a tear slipping from the corner of her eye before it grew more defiant. Naruto didn't care. He had previously informed her of his own plans. "And you? I've been stuck to your side while your friends fought while you stayed behind and did nothing." She winced and turned her head away. When someone claimed that her slaves were her family but neglected to fight with them, it was such hypocrisy. She complained about how unfair everything was. Her entire hope was shattered in front of her as she shuddered. It was pathetic. Neither Issei nor herself were believed by her. Naruto, he supposes, also didn't really believe in them. He closed his eyes and reflected on his personal issues. He monitored the unfair trades of combat. Was that Rias's original plan? That he would have to take action despite the fact that his own destiny was uncertain? That it aligned with their best interests? She was a typical young lady, except for this devil business. Almost a civilian, but he led a shinobi's life, it was. He let out a sigh. Kurama inquired, "So, have you finally come to a decision?" A friend was behind, inside an open gate. An origin of adversity in the past. With a gleam in his eye, the mountain fox smiled as if he already knew how it would turn out. There was no point in responding to a rhetorical question, so Naruto remained silent. His focus returned to the fight in the real world. With his foot resting on Issei's chest, Riser stood above him. Issei's face was swollen and purple. His lips were cracked, and blood ran down them. Riser remarked, "Admit defeat already, you're quite boring." Issei said, "No, I can't." He had a puffy, purple eye. He at least tried, so I had to give him that. Naruto exhaled, admitting that it was simpler to imagine a future with Rias by himself. It also made his decision easier to handle because Riser was a prick, which put him in danger. On the plus side, he would at least give Riser what he deserved. He needed to change his attitude. He wished Rias many things, but none of them were good. Rias could lock a lot of things away and shackle him, but there was only so much she could do. He could never take away his heart, his own opinions, and his beliefs. Naruto moved forward and went past Rias's rumpled body. She followed her gaze up to her eyes. Tears filled their eyes, but when they met his, they became abnormal. But it only served to contradict his earlier ideas. Unless, of course, she was a better actor than he recognized. "You have some luck, Rias, unfortunately." He focused all of his attention on Riser and ignored Rias's expression. He shouted, "Leave him alone already." Riser's eyes narrowed as he turned toward him. "Your battle is with me." Issei struggled to maintain his balance as he went to his knees. He even summoned the strength to yell at him, "Uzumaki?" Back home, there were no such formalities. Riser kneed him in the face, cutting off any words he might have said. "Dispose of him, my queen, would you?" He caught Riser Pfennig's attention. The urge to move in and save Issei was resisted by Naruto. If he could avoid it, she would stay behind him because he didn't want Rias to abruptly ruin his generosity. It was over if she went down. Issei would be all right anyway. If you couldn't use power effectively, what was it? Naruto had to learn that lesson the hard way. It was unreliable. Riser walked confidently in Naruto's direction. An announcement headed for Naruto's ears as a tiny explosion burst into the atmosphere. "Rias Grimori's pawn has retired." From inside him, someone spoke. Kurama put his hand to his cheek. Almost idly, "Wonder what kind of limitation these games they have, looks fun. Beat the shit out of each other so hard and you're fine in the end." They would always have their conversations inside, and nobody would ever know that he was speaking. He could continue working on other things even though he occasionally nods off. Kurama went on talking. "Still, I always knew you'd step in eventually." "Oh yeah?" Naruto asked, almost laying out a sigh because he had only just learned. What had Kurama seen that he was unable to see? Kurama laughed and said, "Now that's irony. I've always found it funny that you now have a jailer, too." "Will you please stop talking?" Naruto answered, hearing the fox, bastard, laugh loudly. When he returned his focus to Riser, he was yapping. "This rating game was a waste of my time. You should have realized this, my lovely Rias," Riser replied. She bared her teeth and spat, "Shut up, don't call me that." "My dear, is your courage being restored by your knight?" Riser answered. Naruto said, shrugging, "I've been known to have that effect." Turns out you're not as bright as I hoped, despite how little intellect it requires to see how foolish it is to face me. In his mind, Naruto could hear the deep rumble of his laugh, which was likely twofold, at the insult, and at the fact that Riser had no idea what was going to happen. Naruto hoped it was the former. Kurama, of course, thought this was hilarious, but he could tell for another reason. It had been a while since he had fought, but it was difficult to forget his way of life, so Naruto dropped into a stance and felt his rage turn into focus as he prepared to pluck Riser's feathers. Riser responded with a few pointless jabs, then, I suppose another example must be set. Riser, show him what the Phoenix is capable of, said another girl who looked like Riser. He set aside his headphones, even though he wished he could fight along to a humorous song that came on. He exchanged a few quick blows, his form good but his speed woefully lacking. Riser bounded forward, so slow that he could dance around him. Naruto struck him in the stomach, and Riser stumbled back, but he was fast to strike back and deliver another punch. When Naruto heard Riser grunting as he attempted to overwhelm him, he pushed him back a step and another, and he grinned at Riser, who only glared back with his teeth bared. Naruto's left arm grappled with Riser's and his free hand crossed with his. As the heat flared on Riser's hand, rising with every second and alone with his strength, his arm glowed aflame. Naruto wanted to prove to Rias that she was mistaken and that he didn't need to be transformed into a devil in order to survive. He tried to crush Riser's arm, grunting as he felt the searing pain, but Riser released his right hand, and he quickly raised his free fist and slammed it down on the handsome boy's face. In Naruto's benevolent view, his appearance immediately improved and only got better when his fist struck Riser's face twice in quick succession, causing Riser to fall to the ground. Naruto was not finished yet, he would be relentless. He repeatedly smashed his fist against his face, but before he could execute his signature move, he was cut off by a tiny fireball, which was enough to send him several meters away before he recovered. Naruto was not given a reprieve as a tiny bolt of energy was hurled at him. He leapt out of the way, and an explosion broke out. Debris flew past, and he shielded his face. He would demonstrate how much more powerful he was than Riser, both for his friend and for himself. Between them, plumes of smoke and dirt rose, and he decided that the smoke was to his advantage, so he dove into the ground and walked in the direction of the other two girls who had attacked him. Where did he go? One of them asked. The blonde devil with her back facing to him. The other one was in the air, one the Rias called the Bomb Queen. He leapt out of the dirt and grabbed the flying devil by the ankles. She yelled in shock, but he held on to her tightly and used his strength to whip her down and swing below. She smashed into the schoolyard's pavement, causing a loud cracking sound. He was not done, though, as he dove to where the Bomb Queen lay, forming a Rasengan in his hand. Riser's queen has retired. He continued, focusing on the other girl, and as he sped in her direction, she closed her eyes and extended her arms. No, hold on. He didn't, and his attack was short-lived. Riser eventually rose from where he had been brought down, the final piece retired, and Naruto resumed his defensive stance in front of Rias. Let's get that forfeit out of that mouth of yours. Riser attempted to stand, his limbs trembling, his face bruised but soon returned to its usual expression of a scowl and ferocious eyes, but Naruto refused to give his opponent a break. Riser's eyes widened as Naruto materialized in front of him, his hand firmly gripping his shoulder. Just wanted to resume from where we left off. As he held him in place, a huge Rasengan formed in his hand. Without waiting for his response, Naruto landed his technique in his stomach and threw him over a bench, spinning around as he skidded through a fence and across the grass and walkways. After stopping, he got up shakily, clutching at his stomach with his teeth gritted together as the gashes, scratches, and even a twisting blister wound on his stomach gradually came together and healed. What you did to Issei will be turned against you, Naruto said, smiling at his distress. Let's see how far your ability to regenerate goes, shall we? Naruto sensed a surge of power. Riser seemed to love his own appearance, and Naruto had lost interest in whatever he had said. Before he could finish, he punched him in the nose and heard a crack. Blood sputtered out of his mouth as a sentence spilled from his lips, and Naruto closed the distance and broke his teeth in. He screamed, but Riser made a weak attempt to defend himself, swinging his fists as the fire consumed them. Naruto almost felt bad, but he suppressed that feeling because of the cruelty he had shown Issei. He avoided physical attacks and avoided using fire techniques, and soon the area was on fire, with red flames matching the sky above. Naruto taunted, "Come on now, thought you would give a better fight." Any power grabs were defeated. Despite Riser's best efforts, he ended up face down in the dirt, dragging his head through it. Perhaps all those cruel remarks from the school had a real effect on Naruto, and it felt good to vent his anger at someone other than Rias at that moment. Naruto sat atop Riser and thought, maybe I've turned into a jerk. Are you still not giving up? Do I really need to take some more extreme action? Lava. How about it? To what extent would that cause you pain? Would you rise like a real phoenix from the ashes? He sputtered out, his breath bursting with dirt. You lie. Why can't I move? I am not a seal. Naruto responded, this fight was boring, and you're just pathetic. He then poured the necessary chakra into a yellow orb that appeared in his hand, and his technique started to glow red and hot, like lava in his own hand. Riser eventually forfeited shortly after. If only good things could last. Naruto turned to face his life's king and ruler, the red-haired high school senior Rias Gremory, who sat with her jaw dropped in confusion. In response, Rias said, why you won? As he stared, Naruto said, I honestly didn't do this for you at all. He was bored with the routine of going to school, and Rias practically clung to him every time they rode the crowded train, where he could hardly find a seat. Usually, though, they would split up after it, but not this time. He always accompanied Rias during these times, so it seemed difficult to break the monotony of their daily commutes. He needed to amuse himself, whether it was by reading a book, playing simple games, or listening to music. Apparently, his slow speed was insufficient to stop her. One such game would be to simply practice his balance by swinging one foot and landing another on the sidewalk dividing lines. It was a simple game, but it was sufficient. Naruto accelerated his pace, which caused Rias to follow suit and maintain the steady few steps between them. When he slowed it, she did the same, but continued to do so even though he slowed to a crawl. His own sluggish pace irritated him, and he let out a deep sigh. All right, Rias, what do you want? We already spend enough time with each other, Naruto said, sweeping his hair back and causing his headphones to fall back around his neck. When he began their conversation, she walked up beside him, matching his pace and trying to hide her smile but giving up, saying, I want to thank you. She looked so proud of herself. Naruto kept hopping, or skipping, as you preferred, saying, you've already thanked me enough, it's annoying. Because of you, I'm no longer engaged to Riser Phoenix. Well yeah, obviously. After wiping a lock of hair from her eyes and straightening her uniform, Rias said, well, I also wanted to ask as to why you did it. Naruto let out a groan as he saw a few students running ahead of them to school. He paused, if only to annoy Rias by letting him know they would be late. He looked at his phone to see the time and discovered that if they followed his pace, they would be late. But even as she looked at the clock, Rias remained by his side, unconcerned and patient. Maybe she would lose it, so he carried on with his caterpillar walk, possibly even taking a detour. When Rias remained silent, Naruto responded, it's not because I felt sorry, so you're out of luck if you were looking for that. Rias felt obliged to go on, saying, I did it because I wouldn't know what the hell would happen to me. If you didn't already know my issue, I would have. Well, you've already seen it. She said, I see. Rias looked straight ahead, a frown forming on her lips as if she was disappointed by his response. What did you believe it to be? You are already aware of how I feel about you, nothing has changed. She met his eyes, her features were fixed, and her expression changed. Why hasn't it changed? That's a dumb question to ask, he said, laughing. Why should I even respond, really? I tried. Rias's fists clenched and her chest puffed, her pride rising in defiance. She heaved a deep sigh but said nothing more, biting her bottom lip and cutting herself off. Naruto fought the urge to sigh, feeling exhausted from being here so long. I guess I didn't try, did I? Rolling his eyes, he said, you're late to class. That's fine. Rias rolled his eyes, went to his desk, leaned back in his chair, and paid no attention to the teacher's lesson, even though they had been late for their first class. All it took to get forgiveness was a weak excuse. He didn't listen, he didn't do any work, and if he did, it was mainly for amusement. Why was Rias so insistent on bringing him here? Enrolling him here to act like a student? They had nothing to do with his field in any way. Rias or one of her peers filled in his assignments because he didn't finish them, but they couldn't do the tests, so he finished near the bottom of the class. The most important thing was that it irritated Rias. He would prefer not to have it taken again, but the day went by without any music to listen to. It was now lunchtime, and Rias was not there, which was a huge plus. Sitting on a bench in a hallway, Naruto ignored everything around him and concentrated on the music being played. It had no lyrics, but he liked the sounds it produced. That they referred to as electronic music, but he was unaware of the subgenre. Naruto turned to see the brown mop of hair that belonged to Issei, and after hearing his name called repeatedly, he finally decided to end the situation. How are you? Those fucking chess pieces were merely a somber reminder of the hole in Naruto's stomach when Rias operated on him in the middle of a park, and he wished he had not been present to see such a thing again. With a startled expression, Issei said, "You won't beat my ass?" "Why would I act in that way?" "Because other people say so." "Well yeah." Issei chuckled. "You also did beat up a couple of those guys for some reason." "I was just defending myself. It wasn't a private hallway," as Issei noticed. Although there were some people strewn about, they were all deep in conversation. "Is it possible for us to speak?" "Why not?" Naruto replied. He wasn't doing anything. Issei led the way, down the hall and up the steps until they were up on the rooftops of the school. There was the sight of the large buildings of the city. Naruto leaned on the railing as he turned to look at Issei. "What do you need anyway?" As he pushed himself to his knees, Issei stared. "How are you so close to Bucko?" "I just want to see her gorgeous breasts," he begged. "Oh no, buddy, you got it all wrong. If you don't seem to remember, I despise her. I can hardly get a sentence out of her lovely lips, but you can converse with her. You have to help me." With a crazed, glassy expression in his eyes, Issei leapt from his knees and seized him by the arms. It wasn't a question, but rather an unsettling one. "Avoid touching me." Naruto dusted the area where his hands had touched for precaution, saying, "I don't know where those hands have been in the last hour, or, based on his remarks, will be soon after this conversation." "Sorry, senpai." "Why are you all so formal, damn you? What was so bad about calling people by their first names?" Naruto asked, but his query went unanswered. "I just want to grow closer to her and, yes, indeed, you have proven that. Then, why not simply speak with Akano to find out what Rias enjoys? They're quite near." "Not possible. The same issue arises with her as well." "You gotta be kidding me," Naruto sighed. "I wonder how these two amazing women look every day, especially if I could compare them side by side, because their breasts are so large. The dream is that." A picture that made him feel torn. "I'll tell you up front that Rias and I have a lot of animosity toward one another. With me helping, you're shit out of luck. Regarding Akano, I'm going to keep that to myself, actually." "You selfish bastard. You know, I'm a man too," he said with a laugh. "So you're my opponent, what? I believed you to be." When Naruto was blinded, the rest of the world was darkened, and he felt as though a spotlight had been placed on his person. It was suffocating. His limbs started to weaken and tremble as he tried to remember how to breathe. He collapsed to a knee. A cold sweat ran through his body. He was unable to breathe in air. It felt like his entire body was locked together. It hurt to try and move. His chest locked up, and breathing deeply made his chest hurt. "Hey, what's the matter?" Issei said, his voice distant and hardly audible. "You went pale like you're dying or something." "You believe so?" Naruto inquired, or more accurately, he probably believed it. In any case, he only needed to concentrate on one thing, feeling for his seal, which Rias carried on her person. Fortunately, it was nearby and simple to locate. He was only able to concentrate on the seemingly endless feeling of dread, regardless of his surroundings. He started to observe himself over time, his vision becoming blurry, his limbs gradually relaxing, his heartbeat slow but seemingly trying to explode through his chest, and he gasped for air as if he had forgotten how to breathe. That was terrifyingly easy to imagine, his limbs and bones popping and expanding with blood gushing through, his chest and ribs popping away. Okay, maybe enough of his imagination, he thought. Droplets fell from his hair as they hit the surface, and one of his only thoughts was how his headset was broken. His hands were on a slippery, wet surface, and he was completely soaked, as one might expect. How did he get wet? In the corners of his vision, he saw soft, bare skin with water droplets cascading down her long legs, bare feet by his side, and someone massaging his back. "How are you?" With a gentle, worried tone, she inquired. No. Why had she got to take a shower? Her skin was so moist and soft, and her long red hair appeared to be a veil covering her more private areas. Fuck. You must be joking with me. Even though he didn't intend for it to happen, he would allow it to happen. He nearly stumbled when he tried to turn away, expecting to be struck and thrown around the room, but it did not turn out that way. "Is there anything you need help with?" she inquired. He experienced a different type of pain, as if his body were resisting him. This seemed to be just another phony layer of worry. "Please put on a damn towel for me. What's wrong with you? Your dignity is missing." He didn't want to be known for bathroom peeking again, but that hand was still massaging his back. According to her, "If you're certain you're okay." "Yes. Indeed." When the pressure on his back subsided, he spat, saying, "I am. Who takes a shower at an abandoned building anyway?" He felt pitiful, especially being like this in front of her. "It calms me." she said normally, showing no signs of distress that he had anticipated. Naruto heard clothes being ruffled before it stopped. I'm dressed. When Naruto looked up, he saw that Rias was dressed in the school uniform this time, and her long red hair was damp. Naruto got to his feet, feeling almost normal again, as if the whole incident had never happened. She said, "You're wet." It felt wrong to say, "You too," but that was the only thing that came to mind. It kept flashing. Damn it. Now he had an image in his mind. Before leaving the room, Naruto threw the headphones in the closest trash can, removed the school jacket, wrung it out, and did the same to his shirt. He didn't speak to her, just concentrated on his actions. Her eyes widened at the sight of Akeno outside with a tray of treats, and a small smirk came to her face as she followed them down to his chest. "Oh, taking showers with Bucko now. Did she want to express her gratitude to you?" After she giggled, Naruto muttered, "Shut you. He couldn't stop his cheeks from getting hot, which only made her laugh. Puddles formed beneath him as he took off his shoes and socks, saying, "Fuck these shoes and socks, I'd rather have my sandals." Naruto checked the phone he was given, and it appeared to be in good working order. He had some fire techniques, but he would just end up ruining them, so he threw his shirt and jacket over the heater. "You're stripping off." With a hand on her cheek and her eyes scanning him, Akeno responded, "Our relationship is going fast, not that I don't enjoy it." Having girls swoon over him was nothing new to him, especially given the high volume of people visiting the Hidden Leaf. Even though he remained silent, Naruto felt his cheeks heat up against his will. Akeno was a pretty woman, and that playful smile nearly turned him off. Those breasts were something else, maybe like. Shortly after, Rias came in, her hair completely dry this time. "Are you certain you're alright?" Naruto merely gave her a curt nod in response to her question. In an attempt to ignore everyone and his feelings of embarrassment, he chose to eat one of the snacks that Akeno had prepared while sitting in a chair. Perhaps he ought to have left. It was difficult to get rid of the pictures from earlier, and now whenever he thought about Rias, he would always think that she wasn't just some cold, stupid, evil demon devil or whatever they call themselves. A gorgeous young woman would always follow it or come before it. Fuck. He was genuinely depressed. Why had that happened? "Oh, please stop talking already. How much longer will you continue to moan?" shouted Kurama. "What do you know? I believe I enjoy the torment you were going through." He seemed composed and concentrated, but he was writhing inside, and the front of the door slammed open, waking him from his reverie. Panicked and with wide eyes, Issei poured through, and he hurried to Rias, speaking quickly. Breathless, he said, "Uzumaki vanished. One moment he was there, and the next he just popped away. I don't know what the hell happened. We must also." Issei's eyes dropped to his half-naked form as he finally saw Akeno and everyone else with him, and he froze. Senpai. Naruto grimaced. "Yo. Things had to get bad." Issei looked at them all, one by one, for a few seconds before he stopped on Naruto. His lips quivered, his eyes spoke of betrayal, and his eyes spoke of distress. Why are you naked? Isn't it what you were about to do with them? You dumbass. Naruto eyed Rias and said, "That perv is in your peerage." He suddenly started crying and ran out the door. With a sigh, she said, "I know, Rias." She winced. "Because we're conversing, and I'd prefer to limit those conversations to once a day. What would you think if I were discovered half-naked in the hallways by a teacher? Do you think I'd be suspended?" Akeno was staring with her chin in the palm of her hand. "No, perhaps detention." "Yes, but what if I flash a few people?" he said. With her head shaking and mouth hanging in disapproval, Scandalized said, "You'll do no such thing." Akeno laughed and said, "We'll just go home for today." "What? Really?" Akeno laughed once more. "Are we corrupted by Uzumaki-kun?" "Well," Rias stammered, "you don't have any extra clothes here anyway." "Oh, so the remaining classes will be cancelled?" Anyway, this was all right with him, and Rias would need to be close anyway. He said, "Let's go then." Naruto, still drenched from his shower, got up and gathered his things. It was an interesting application, and a moment later they were in a rather large apartment for the city, and he stepped beside a glowing seal that appeared beneath her feet. With Rias missing class, has everything fallen apart? Rias just crossed her arms and gave a crooked pout in response, but she didn't say anything. Stretching, he changed into a simple orange shirt and some joggers, comfortable stuff, he thought, and went past Rias's room, which was always closed, no matter what. He was surprised to find Rias sitting on the love seat in the living room. He considered leaving, but he decided she would win, so he took a seat on the large couch for himself. He wanted to watch TV, so he found the remote control and turned it on, but it wasn't quiet like he had hoped. How far along were you at the time? She inquired. His eyes narrowed as he looked at her, wondering what her goal was. Thoughts ran through his head, but he didn't come up with anything, so he went back to his show. The other side of the school, on the one of the balconies. Fortunately, it was a pleasant pause as he got into his show. Her brow furrowed and she thought deeply for a long time. I'm worried about you. Oh, I see. He gave an eye roll. That process shouldn't be going on the way it is or should have ended long ago. Nothing about it makes sense. Naruto responded, sure. No, said Rias, shaking her head. I mean it. With the limitations of the devil pieces, you shouldn't have been able to fight Riser with the strength you did. Remember what happened to every one of my pawns? In order to end the conversation, he chose to make fun of her. All right, I can't really forget what happened to me, he said. All of your pawns were taken, correct? Yes, but you only took a knight, she said, nodding. As you can see, Kyoto hasn't reached his full potential. You haven't trained at all, though, have you? But you're much stronger. He answered, whatever. What are you trying to say? She sighed. Whatever the extent of your power, it shouldn't be able to be contained by one knight piece even compared to how you faced Riser. The subject of strays came up during the conversation. He listed many reasons why he did not want to die, including becoming a stray and becoming a deranged, insane creature. Anyway, it isn't your issue. But it is. I'll ask my brother if he's ever seen anything like this, she said. I'll ask the maker of these pieces if he doesn't know the answer. They ought to be able to determine your problem. I'll believe it when it happens. Naruto looked at her, but she ignored him, appearing to be lost in thought. According to his research, the piece that was integrated into him was a seal that resembled Kurama in certain ways. If it broke, it would most likely kill him. May I ask you a question? Did Rias ask? She smiled for an odd reason he couldn't figure out, and he sighed, go ahead. He laughed at his overused joke. Was he the first to think of this comeback? You can teleport to me with this thing on my arm? Rias spoke, pointing to her shoulder. She said she would do it if it would help him stop being such a jerk, but in her own words, yeah. Have you always had fighting skills? He responded, of course, even though that was more than one thing. I must be proficient in it. Oh, and what's the reason? She looked back at him as he turned to face her, and he shook his head, causing her to tilt her head sideways. He rolled his eyes and turned to face the television. Rias, you should get me another pair of headphones, he thought after they continued watching television. She scowled and puffy cheeks changed to a smile as he said, only if you do well for our exam tomorrow. He didn't ask because that would be too kind. Do you have an exam tomorrow? Damn, he nearly saw them bare, Naruto said, and she nodded matter of factly as she crossed her arms once more, highlighting her already enormous bust. There is. So, do you agree? Rias said, annoyed. After giving it some thought, Naruto said, I will if it's a good set. He hadn't accomplished anything significant since coming here, but it would require some work. It was then her turn to reflect, her lips moving in different ways as she said, if you get an A. She had all the money and all the power over him, she could practically teleport away and he would be a goner. Fine. He felt like he was bartering with a parent, which was incredibly pitiful. Rias grinned, excellent, we have a lot to learn about Uzumaki. That time in hell was enough for him, and he could see how excited she was, taking notes and organizing them in her mind. Right, I'm not going to study. But, you can't get that good of score without studying and you never study. Very true, he answered back, but I want study with you. Rias gazed for an extended period of time. Then if I win, you wouldn't mind if I add that you would spend the weekend with me doing anything that I want? He nearly burst out laughing. Okay, sure. She returned to her seat but continued to look at him. When she began doing other things, he eventually managed to tune her out. Her homework on the coffee table, her phone and giggles, and then just watching the shows with him. She was silent, and Naruto sensed his mood. After all that time, she naturally had to ruin it all again. Thank you again. Even if you said you did it only for yourself. I don't think I've ever met someone who wanted to thank me as much as you. Naruto's attention is fixed on the paper before him. He glanced at the instructions written on the board. He could hear pencils and pens tapping and scratching around the room. Before the answer came to him in the form of a new memory, he reclined in his chair. He jotted down the response and then reclined in his chair. Oh. Clone shadows. Therefore, it's helpful for cheating on his paper's answers. He edged his paper so his clones could see the questions while he sat close to the windows. All of the responses had been viewed by one clone, which provided the data for writing. After they figured out the solution, all they needed to do was pop, and he would write it down. Naruto would have been happy to be expelled. Rias, however, desired that he attend this school. Rias found it more difficult because she insisted on having him present. Additionally, she resolved an issue involving tests that he refused to take. For this one, Naruto had to give her credit. A short-term one. Despite being faster than the watchful Rias and Akano, Naruto was the first person to finish the exam. With a look of expectation on her face that he was going to ruin, the teacher eyed him. The teacher took his paper and glanced quickly through the pages with a look of disbelief. Surprising, but I hope you continue, Mr. Uzumaki. The only reason I'm doing this is to receive something in exchange. Staring at him, he said, then I hope these incentives keep coming. Some people believe that someone else was doing his homework for him, and they would be correct because Rias did. This test would be all him, and even though he cheated, it was still him. Naruto sat back in his chair and drew random things in his notebook, which was his entire book, because there was no reason to take notes. He waited, staring out the window as the bell rang, announcing the end of class, and he heard chairs being pushed back and some excited student conversation. Naruto turned to face the offender as he heard a container fall onto his desk. Naruto muttered, Rias. Among other things, he was criticized for being impolite, even if he had just mentioned her name without any honorifics or her last name. As she brushed loose hair from her face, the girl grinned and said, this is for you, seeing as you finished first. Looking at the box containing the bento on his desk, Naruto said, I've already made my lunch if you didn't forget. She continued to smile, and although Naruto wanted to find a way to wipe it from her face, nothing came to mind. The civilians here were very noisy, and Naruto noticed that the fox wasn't the only one saying something. Cold, Kurama said. She's giving him lunch, but why? Does she also like Uzumaki, senpai? Rias said, I know, but I thought you might appreciate something better prepared. He accepted the bento box and said, are you upset that I finished first? It's true that he was sick of the same sandwiches. Well, it remains to be seen if you've accomplished our bet. Subsequently, he heard remarks about how much of a jerk he was, so he grabbed Rias's bento and headed to the cafeteria to eat. Since it was lunchtime, other students were also heading there, or else they would be heading into town or somewhere else on school property to eat privately. When he finally arrived at the cafeteria, he sat down at a table and started eating. The food exploded with flavor as he put it in his mouth, and he stuffed it in his face because it was so good. Why had it to be that way? It was wiped off the table when Issei sat down opposite him, which was fine. He'd much rather have that happen. He didn't have any music or headphones, which might have made him more approachable, and it also prevented Rias from talking to him and helped muffle her voice. He had anticipated another typical day today. May I speak with you, senpai? Wondering what he wanted this time, Naruto's brow twitched. Sure, why not? Are you a boob man or an ass man? Issei asked, looking around to make sure no one was listening in. Some people looked curiously in their direction, but the crowd was too loud for anyone to hear them. I thought this would be important. Of course it is. Despite his laughter, he shrugged and said, I suppose a boob man? A gleam appeared in his eyes, as if Issei had experience discussing this topic, not the experience, but the talking. Big ones? I'm not sure if any size is ideal. They're just aesthetically pleasing, don't you think? Why were they discussing this? I'm just going to leave if you're not going to talk about anything else. I'm sorry. With you. I simply didn't know where to begin. How long have you been a devil, I guess? About some time before school, maybe a month or two it started, been stuck with Rias ever since. That was better. It must have been because of friends who didn't talk about girls. You were normal before then? Did he ask? Naruto responded, I was normal. However, their definitions of normal were different because he wasn't from this dimension, so maybe Rias had suspicions about him or at least his abnormal status. Naruto waited with a steely resolve in his eyes as Issei stated, there's one other thing I want to know, it's the reason why I wanted to talk to you in the first place. Why did you and Bucko go for a walk yesterday? You claim to despise her. We live together, and she walks with me. He was unsure of why he had such a different expectation. You share a home with her. Why are you so fortunate, senpai? Issei muttered other things, such as how he had spent a lot of time alone with her, while looking emotional with his head buried in the table and his arms covering his head. Luck, Riite. This exchange made it clear that Issei and Rias did not dislike each other. Issei was transformed into a devil after being stabbed in the stomach and carrying what he called a scared gear, or metal gear. A weapon too. Something like a weapon anyhow. When Naruto descended farther into his seal, the face of Kurama emerged. Naruto grinned and showed no animosity toward Kurama. Hey, that sounds so familiar, I wonder why. I hope it isn't malevolent and doesn't attempt to flee. Go enjoy your bento Rias gave you. Kurama looked blank, as if he was appalled. Bastard. As he consumed the last of his food, Naruto returned his attention to the present. Issei went on speaking. Senpai, switch with me since you despise Bucko. When she's feeling lonely, she will then come to me. Naruto chuckled and said, are you serious? Furthermore, if you continue to talk like that, I believe I've reached my daily limit of Issei today, and it's not my choice. By not choosing, what do you mean? Somewhere across the cafeteria, Naruto tossed the box into the closest trash can. Look, you don't have to deal with this stray devil crap that you've seen on your first outing, Naruto said. Yes, I do. I have to stay in touch with the person who made me feel this way every second because I have to worry about that constantly. During Golden Week, he had witnessed some of Issei's training. Naruto had done a lot of his own work, but he was mainly confined to that area. He trained alone, but it was done to refine his own shinobi skills, and despite his best efforts, it was very challenging to control the energy that Rias had kindly given him. Is it really that awful? Look how far I was from her the other day, I can't be more than a city's distance away at most, replied Naruto. That's what took place. He nodded in response to Issei's question, I'm glad you're okay. I am too. He finished his lunch, which was so much better than the cafeteria's selection or the packed lunches, and they were silent for a while. Issei's face lit up with excitement. Senpai, it was so awesome when that enormous orb materialized in your hand. Look at that, he wasn't just thinking about girls and boobs, Issei said. Can you teach me that? Thanks, and no I can't. They kept talking, and Issei was fine as long as he wasn't constantly talking about girls. Eventually, the bell rang, and he might as well go to his next class and sit there doing nothing again, since it seems that he couldn't even leave school without his condition getting worse. Whatever nefarious ideas Issei might have had about Rias, Naruto didn't believe. But Akeno was another matter entirely, she was a pretty woman. After finishing his talk with Issei, he went on with his classes for the day. The unfortunate thing about being a senior was that he was in most of Rias' classes. Why did he always sit next to her? Sitting behind him was Rias, who remarked, you look confident. The teacher was reviewing the expectations and rules for the exam when he said, you might as well hand over the money. Only when we get our marks back. Ah. Naruto moaned. He had to wait a whole week for that. He stopped talking to her, even though she was talking more. He heard the others watching this spectacle whispering to each other, but he could hear everything they were saying. They were talking about how one of the two great ladies of Kuo was speaking to him, and he had been openly hostile to her ever since he had arrived. Apparently it was sacrilege to be an ass to Rias. Is she speaking to him once more? But, he's an asshole. She is always kind to everyone, which is why she is so wonderful. It makes sense why everyone adores her. Praise for her and shit talking to him, but occasionally there were compliments about his appearance and even what the bandages on his arms concealed. Some people claimed that he had a burn injury, while others said that his arm sleeve was covered in tattoos. They came up with some really strange nonsense, and there were always conspiracies about what was concealed beneath his arm, such as how the tattoos indicated that he was involved in some kind of organized crime. Naruto threw a piece of eraser at the person who said, she's trying to melt that cold emotionless heart of his. He wasn't emotionless or cold. He was a shinobi, for crying out loud, and the D-class missions were much better than the hell he was in right now. Since the teacher wouldn't care that he left after finishing his exam, he got up and headed for the hallways, where he wandered for a while. Someone behind him said, Uzumaki-san. Sona Citri, another devil Rias had mentioned, was in the school. She was wearing the academy uniform with the ever.so short skirt, and she was adjusting her glasses while looking at him. Sona was another person who believed he was in charge of him. Are you missing class once more? He shrugged and said, kinda, it was an exam. I can't imagine you ever finishing early, she said with a disappointed sigh. It's absurd, actually, and I take you to some. It was only a remnant of how far he'd fallen. Just a visit home would be great. Sona caught up to him after Naruto left and ignored her once more. Being a student, you should know that you're expected underscore. Sona, what are you going to do? Put someone in detention? I won't do that, as we both know. Please do me a favor and either suspend or expel me. Naruto chuckled. Will you please shout out to Rias on my behalf? How rude, she replied. I demand that you stop these games. Games? He laughed and said, Rias is the only one who can make demands of me. Because slave things, you know. She is the sole reason I am enrolled in this institution. Sona walked away with her head held high, frowning but saying nothing else. With no teacher to interrupt him, Naruto kept moving through the halls as if he belonged there, and when he heard someone else walking down the hall, he didn't pay any attention, that is, until someone tapped on his shoulder. If only he had music. Naruto turned to face the shorter, red-haired girl to whom he was shackled. Oh god, he winced. Are you also missing class? She grinned and said, but of course, I finished my exams too. It was Rias once more. Why did I think you would finish last, damn you? Well, perhaps we're closer than we realize, she said with a laugh. His lips formed a question as he snorted, that'd be a bummer. So why are you bothering me now when you barely did before now? He asked. I no longer have to worry about myself because of you. I want to maintain the Gremmary's reputation for being kind to their peers. Even if I treat you like a jerk? Especially you. Naruto extended his arms and felt the vest and dress shirt. Although it wasn't as cozy as some of his other clothing, it was still preferable to the school uniform. He wouldn't wear it very often. As she put on lipstick, Rias began to hum to herself while staring into a coffee table mirror. Naruto could have said something disparaging, but he couldn't think of anything. The need was still there, but the thought was absent. In any case, what was the point? Despite his best efforts, he was unable to make Rias feel as though she was nothing more than acid on his tongue. She took everything he said, filtered it all, and transformed it into a smile and grateful eyes. What an oddball. Really? Observing the response was part of the fun. How come she had to be so self-centered? He missed the good times, the easy good times, the enjoyable good times when she was impacted by any remark. She was merely a punching bag now. That made him smile. She ruined what little fun he could have, so I hoped she was happy. He said, what are we doing again? He was complying with whatever it was. Rias straightened her form. Fitting red gown. He didn't realize how amazing it looked until he saw it, and it was strapless. Strapless looked amazing. It could have been the cleavage, the bare shoulders, the absence of bra straps, the size, or something else entirely. Fortunately, Rias was unaware. He hoped so. I asked my brother to help you with your devil piece, and in turn, he asked the creator of the evil pieces to help out. This party is just an excuse to find what might be wrong with it. As she fastened an earring, he stopped buttoning his vest and turned to face her, her long red hair now swept aside. She seemed to be taking it seriously. What else would she do? There was nothing for her to do. He would be appreciative if she could extract this devil piece from him. But even then, when he couldn't figure out the answer on his own, there was no point in thinking about it. He wasn't an expert at this. A trip home would be pleasant. His question was, is that it? Naruto extended a formal jacket for examination. He was dressed in formal attire, but it wasn't the kind he was used to. Rather, it was what they called Western attire. He returned it to the sofa. He preferred his sandals, so he skipped the shoes. He might alter it because it may have somewhat damaged his reputation. Still, it was kind of fun to dress up. Seeing the various cultures around the world, along with their beliefs, television, and internet, was fascinating. Well, formally, it's a celebration for you winning the rating game for me. My brother just used that as an excuse to have a party. He asked, what's wrong with him, after noticing a frown. Naruto has yet to meet her brother, however, he noticed the resemblance while attending the rating game. Oh, nothing, Rias said with a stilted laugh, he's just overbearing. Which might be putting it mildly. Oh. Naruto saw her get up from the lonely love seat and sank down to the seat next to him after he picked up the light blue tie that was on the couch and put it back down. With her eyes as bright as ever, she asked, do you know how to tie that? No. Why do you think I never wear the one on the uniform? I thought it was your preference. It is. She picked up the tie that was lying between them and said, you should wear it. It will bring out your eyes. It can do that, of course. With what? Magic? Rias chuckled, nothing like that, it's just a shade lighter than yours. He got up to put some distance between them and said, I don't get it, as she followed, tie in hand, it didn't work. She said, let me try and put it on you. She swung the tie behind his neck, and he scowled. She was as tall as he was, and he could smell her perfume. After her gentle hand made a few loops, she released it and grinned slightly as she said, actually, I don't know how to tie one either. I don't blame you, you're not a guy. Why did you try? I thought it was easy. He took hold of it and attempted to tie it together, saying, it shouldn't be too hard. How does it look? Terrible. Oh yeah? You just gave up. Rias ran to the kitchen table, picked up a magazine, and leafed through the pages as she walked back, saying, then I'll try again, and do it right. She showed him a page. He didn't understand the purpose of the magazine, but the images on the page showed him how to tie a number of knots. Unwilling to give it up, she was determined to tie it for him even though it appeared complicated. Okay, you're trying too hard, she said sharply, but you tried for me. Really, this is nothing. Was it necessary for her to be so dramatic? He took a seat on the couch and turned on the TV. However, she was correct. This was insignificant. Okay. I got it, I think. Get up please. Oh yes, sure, of course master, bucko or whatever. The blues pierced Rias's pause. Please, anything but that, anything, was all that came out of her trembling lips in a yearned whisper. Like a hand pierced by lightning into his chest, the sincerity was impossible to miss. Yes, it was that clear, believe him, he saw it with his own eyes. All of a sudden, he wasn't sure how to behave. He mumbled, well, okay. Instead, he stumbled when he spoke. What on earth? He hadn't even anticipated it, so this was a departure from her typical response. A gentle smile glowed in her eyes. Thank you. Not sure what to say, he said, it's not like, never mind. When her hands found the tie and encircled his neck, Rias said nothing. Her features took on a focused expression, and she occasionally turned away from the images to follow its instructions. He loosened it, and she tightened it, saying, there, all done. He took a step back as she did. You look handsome. Of course. Rias took a step back and clasped her hands behind her back, enunciating her chest, saying, how about me, how'd I look? She looked amazing, but he wasn't going to tell her that. Okay I guess. She sighed, scowled, and took a seat. Naruto watched TV while leaning back on the couch. You should complete contracts, it will help you in the future, Rias said. Although there was a pleasant silence, Naruto noticed her staring out of the corner of his eye and rolled his eyes, saying, I'm not in the slightest bit interested in that Rias. There's no use in trying, so don't bring it up. Even when he looked at her, he twitched when she continued to move. What? Is there something the matter? Why? She pursed her lips. It's just you're not being as asshole-ish. Usual with me. Nice save. And besides, you're not even reacting anymore. What's the point? Out of the corner of his eye, he saw her staring. Her eyes were closed due to the intensity of her smile. Then it occurred to him how she might interpret it. She remained silent for a long time until she naturally spoke up. You know, there's a soft heart inside you, I'm thinking. Don't push it. She gave it a half-hearted effort to conceal her smile. But, really, is there something that I can do? She should be aware of these things, but he wasn't sure she could accomplish much that someone else could. No. He questioned whether it was things she didn't say or if she knew. She would play the master and he the slave for the time being. This was definitely a party, and the food was excellent, no ramen. It was full of people he didn't like, though. He also didn't bother to recall their names. He remained in a corner with Rias Peerage because he wished to reduce the number of devils he would encounter. He gave the drink. Rias handed him a suspicious look. Drink it, it's good. He sniffed at a juice he couldn't identify, but he shrugged and took a sip anyhow. She was right. Delectable. He was watched by golden eyes. Unamused, blank. It was the same look Naruto had noticed. Emotionless. He was beckoned into the dark abyss by dead eyes. Before the thought was complete, Naruto muttered, do you say anything at all? Kaneko was not, based on the glimmer of fire in her eye, asshole. Was what she said. Only one. He twitched his eye, other than that. Kaneko ate a big cookie while everyone stared at him. Pointing to Issei, she said, he's a degenerate pervert. Issei complained. Rias inquired, are you hungry, Uzumaki-kun? I could eat more, is there ramen? No, what the hell? But, ramen isn't. I'll stop you right there. You like ramen then? I'll keep that in mind. Naruto leaned back against the couch and said, good luck with that. He didn't think she could ever top Tuchi's ramen, which was a masterpiece. Bucko, is it true that you make bentos for senpai? Issei inquired. She said, yes, why? You're so lucky senpai. As he watched Issei's response, Naruto crossed his arms once more. What prevented the man from thinking about Rias? He gave the redhead a quick look. What kind of company do you keep? You're a part of it too, she said, blinking at him. What a bunch of losers. Yeah, I'm surrounded by idiots, everyone last one. Shut up Kurama. Go back to sleep. Kurama trailed off menacingly, then smiled inside. Why? This is interesting to me too. Plus, I want to witness, he said. Witness what? You'll see. In real life, someone made an attempt to speak with him. Akeno questioned. Ah, am I a loser too, Uzumaki-kun? A little less maybe, he said, clearing his throat while concentrating on the elite gathered in the corner. Where is Kiba anyway? Issei laughed and asked, light. Kiba? Naruto twitched his eye. Hey Issei, Rias tied my tie and said I was handsome, did she do that to you? Issei sobbed, no. The last laugh would go to Naruto. Don't laugh, bucko. Despite her best efforts to conceal her smile, Rias failed to laugh. I'm sorry, but, as for my other knight, he said he wasn't feeling too well, she sighed. They were responsible for resolving any issues they encountered. There was small talk in the conversation. That is, until someone who looked like Rias came up. My little Ria.tan. How are you? So, this is the savior of my little sister? With a smile on his face and crimson hair, Naruto looked up from his drink. He was sure it was Rias's brother. The devils around them gave him a quick look before continuing on with their activities. Ria.tan. Murmured Naruto. He looked at Rias, who smiled uncomfortably. And yeah, I'm Naruto. Sears Lucifer. Oh cool. When Rias tugged on his sleeve to get him to follow, Sears nodded to him and told the others to remain where they were. For now, how about we converse somewhere privately? After leaving the party's main hall, they went through a few sets of doors and into another spacious room in his enormous mansion. Ria.tan told me that you have some problems with your evil piece, replied Lucifer. The almost carefree atmosphere had vanished, and a polished professionalism had taken its place. Oh. I sure do. I have to be near her at all times, mostly. Sometimes I can be further away, but I haven't really tried how far. Interesting. Usually, this process only lasts several weeks, or at least until they can control that power. As far as I'm concerned, some months is abnormally long. He questioned, what would happen if it's removed? Removing pieces is difficult to accomplish. Often, it ends in the death of the holder. But then Kurama flashed that grin, and Naruto emerged in his seal. Well, what you know, that's familiar. I don't think it's as violent as what happened with me, hummed Kurama. I remember how much it hurt that it made me pass out. I think the question that's more important to you, would you still be a devil? What would happen if he did take it off would be another. Naruto looked away from Kurama and took in his surroundings. Would you kindly show that yellow orb you displayed at the rating game? Rias's brother asked him once more. Sure. In the palm of his hand, a yellow Rasengan developed. Interesting. The man's expression was inquisitive, and Naruto knew what to ask next. How about demonic energy? Rias's greenish blue eyes swept over him. Rias was aware that he possessed a different kind of energy, which was ultimately the cause of his transformation into a devil. He had never described the nature of his power or its scope. I can't, no matter how hard I try. Can you try for me? I guess. Shutting his eyes, Naruto concentrated on the so-called demonic energy. It was a lengthy process. He was surrounded by yellow, a familiar presence of that power, with red undertones that occasionally blended with the yellow. Naruto gazed at the strange, foreign little black sphere that swam throughout this whole aura. This, he assumed, would be a symbol of the balance of power. He recognized two of them, along with numerous others that belonged to Sage and the tailed beasts. He could use it. Naturally, he was clueless about how to use the black ball. Alienated and strange. He gazed at it as it reflected everything around it. This was not the place for it. With hesitation, Naruto extended his hand and stopped a breath away. The outcome was instantaneous after he touched it. Rias was the one who caught Naruto when he stumbled, preventing him from hitting the ground. Her blue eyes became worried. His throat felt dry, and his heartbeat was irregular. She took a step forward and he took a step back. He spat, and she took a step back, saying, I'm fine. It was not a pleasant feeling, but it was not as bad as it had been. He tried deep, calm breathing to calm his heart, but it didn't work. Nevertheless, it would pass. Sears put a thoughtful hand to his chin and remained silent as he thought. That power is unfamiliar to me, and I fancy myself as having witnessed all forms of power. We can't discount the fact it may play a part. Ria.tan. Please fetch some water for the young man, he looks thirsty. Before leaving, Rias gave them both a quick glance. It's definitely the reason why she might have resurrected you. Naruto answered, I needed no resurrection. Sears hummed, grinning. Regardless of you both think, Rias wanted me to try and help you. She is very concerned about you. Naruto scowled. Ah, sorry, she just wanted me to be serious about this. To do whatever it took to help you. Well, I saw the concern, and I made a promise, and a promise between siblings is not one I take lightly. Keep your word. I get it. I'll say something, but I also want Rias to be here too. Ah, don't misconstrue, she didn't want any of this said. I'm saying this out of concern for my sister. Naruto answered, I understand completely. Despite not having a biological brother, Naruto understood the bond of a sibling. Sears nodded as his eyes pierced his own. I also wanted to take this chance to thank you for getting my sister out of that marriage. Oh yeah? Do it again when I'm not around. He said, his eyes widening. It sounds like my dear sister has a road ahead of her. Once more, the door opened, and Rias entered carrying a glass of water. Without a word, he accepted the glass and drank it until it was empty. With his teeth clenched, Naruto uttered, "Rias, I'm sure you noticed, haven't you? With my fight with Riser." He broke the glass in his hands, a shard in his palm, and Rias winced. He had a prosthetic arm made from the cells of the first Hokage, which was covered in bandages to conceal the white skin. But the other was his own blood and flesh. "Not that I think I'm special or anything." As she yelled out what he was doing, he saw her eyes widen and the terrified expression on her face as he held onto the splintered piece. Although it hurt, he had previously cut his arm. A messy gash ran down his arm, and blood dripped from his wound. "Ah, you fucking idiot." His arm was surrounded by a yellow glow as Kurama's chakra passed through it until it was immaculate. Naruto stated, there was no need. She didn't need to know anymore, so he couldn't look at her. He walked past her and entered the room. "And you accused her of being dramatic." "Kurama, shut up, it was nothing." "Yeah, it was nothing, but still stupid to do. What's with this anyways? I already know how this will end, because I know Naruto Uzumaki, and you also know how it goes." He didn't respond. As Rias Grimori made her way through the crowd, some people congratulated her on her first win, which somewhat irritated her because she was looking for someone and it only made her move more slowly. It should have been simple, but it was more difficult than she had anticipated, she thought as she scanned the crowd. To steady her trembling breath, Rias inhaled deeply. She rubbed her hands together uneasily. She looked through the crowd once more before locating the person she was seeking. "I hope this helps." Her mother said, "Hello darling." Before the smile vanished. "Is there something the matter?" "I wanted to ask for some advice." A broad smile flashed up. "Oh, has my dear daughter finally found a boy to love?" "What? No, it's something pretty much the opposite of that. Can we move somewhere private?" She nodded aside from her wide eyes. They had to cross the crowd once more, which took some time because the guests had stopped them several times. They walked into an empty dining room. "What is it, dear?" Unable to locate the beginning of it all, Rias folded her arms. She decided to simply explain everything. She discovered Naruto in a crater with a knife in his hand and his stomach open. Her explanations, his feeble murmurs, and his refusal to accept that solution. Sometime before classes began, that's where it all began. When Venelana Gremory said, "So, it is boy trouble then," she laughed. Rias scowled. "If you want to put it that way. It's just a joke, dear." With an optimistic look in her eyes, Rias said, "So, is there any way you can help? Do you like him?" "What? Do you like him?" When Rias saw her mother's rather serious expression, she said, a bit I guess, he helped me win the rating game." Her mother let out a small sigh and spoke in a reprimanding tone. "From what you've told me, he is not a nice person, especially not towards my daughter." "He's actually not that bad." "Oh, defending him?" As her mother waited patiently for her to continue, Rias answered, "Of course, he's a part of my peerage, and I know him a bit. Uzumaki.kun helping me in the rating game. He says that he did it for himself, but I'd like to think he also did it to help me. He also calls me Rias, and I even asked him to when he called me by another and he didn't stop. There's a lot of small things too. It's just complicated with him." Her mother exhaled. "Then, if he's like that, it sounds like he's frustrated. He's getting to know you better. For now, I think it's better if you leave him alone for a little while, especially what happened today. Perhaps, let him make the next move to talk to you." At the party, she made an effort to unwind, but her mind was consumed by the image of Naruto slashing his arm, crimson blood streaming out, and his features unaffected. Before she watched it heal together, her thoughts were focused on his arm erupting in golden light. When she had met him, it had not happened so quickly. Akeno said, "Bucko, you okay?" "Oh, just Uzumaki.kun. Have you talked with him at all?" Akeno grinned and said, "A little. He can be funny when he wants to. Where is he anyway?" Rias then explained what had transpired earlier, saying, "He's with my brother and the creator of the evil pieces." Which, given her preferences, she regretted doing. Akeno shivered and moistened her lips. "Ura, I hope you won't mind if I borrowed him, or maybe, I can come over." "You'll have to ask him, I want to give him space." My, Bucko, that face you're making, are you a little jealous?" "I'm appreciative of what he did, but I don't love him," replied Rias. "I never said anything about love." Rias scowled at her best friend, who merely giggled in response. There was a loud clang of glass slapping lightly against another. Everyone could see the familiar sight of whiskered cheeks and blonde hair up ahead. Akano said eagerly, this should be interesting. As she stepped forward, Rias exclaimed, oh no, it wasn't good, whatever was going to happen. She started talking after hearing Naruto clear his throat. I'm about to say some truths, and whatever the reaction will tell me everything. Hello Slavers, I'm sure all you are having a wonderful night, because I'm sure I'm not. I'm a knight of Rias Grammary, and you all suck. This peerage crap is just some lame attempt to hide. When Rias finally got to him, he yanked him off the stairs. The heat made her face flush. She felt a knot in her stomach. Naruto remarked, took you long enough. Some of the rage in the devil's words was audible to Rias in the murmurs of disapproval. As she moved through the crowd, she avoided making eye contact with anyone. Her brother suddenly appeared in front of her, his eyes hard. I think it's best if you return home for now. I'll have your peerage returned after this mess. Sirzek scowled and looked at them both before speeding by without giving them another glance. Naruto and Rias exited the glyph and entered their shared apartment. Why did you do that? Is that a question, or is that a command? Either way, it's obvious, said Naruto, raising his eyebrow. He shifted his weight and crossed his arms. She sighed, admitting that she was simply agitated. You can say all you want to me, but leave everyone else out of it. For a long time, Naruto just stared at her in a deafening silence. He remained silent and showed no sign of saying, yes. He simply untied his tie, kicked off his shoes, and went to his room. Wait, said Rias. What did you find out? Naruto remained silent. He couldn't tell if this week was good or bad. Yes, the headphones were back, and this time the sound was even better than before. He gave Rias his flawless exam scores, which was the only contact he had with Rias or the others during the previous week. When he had approached, she had looked hopeful, but all he had said was that he owed her a pair of headphones. He had anticipated a vehement denial after what he had done a few days earlier, but she had given in, stating that she was impressed and had purchased the pair he had wanted. Between him and the others, not much had been said. He had a few conversations with Issei and even one with Akano. He did not interact with Rias's peerage in any other way. Since they had returned from that party, Rias had made no attempt to talk to him. Her anger was understandable. He had discovered a console earlier this week, attached to his room in Rias's apartment, for a low price, sold by an irate mother as a child sobbed softly behind the door. In addition to the fact that someone else would buy it and that he needed to kill time, he bought it because it was a good deal. A seal on his prosthetic arm activated just as he was about to show that little prick boss who really rules this place. That brief moment of distraction meant, you died. Bullshit. Rias seemed to be involved in all of his annoyances lately. It had better be an emergency because that was all he had instructed her to use it for. To put on his sandals. Naruto hurried to the door. After closing his eyes and focusing on the seal, he took a few more deep breaths and executed the technique. Naruto exclaimed, what the hell is going on? Naruto glanced around him. They were at the school, and there were holes and other debris in the field. Issei said, Senpai, when did you get here? He chose whatever mess he got into over him. A fallen angel with too many pairs of wings, 2 women in tight suits, and a few other inconsequential individuals were among the many people he didn't know. He didn't really care about it, and he was missing a lot of context. He didn't want to be involved with this nonsense. Naruto returned the small piece of paper to Rias after picking it up and folding it into a ninja star. Uzumaki.kun. I don't suppose you can fight this person? I hope. Rias responded. Everyone appeared distressed. There were a few scuffed clothes, tiny craters in the grass, and Rias's barrier had been erected around the red glow school. It was obvious that they had not fought long. Another filthy devil joins the fray. You brought another one to die. How thoughtful of you, Gremory. Naruto looked at the fallen angel floating in the sky after giving Rias a confused look in her blues. You're the one who did all this. Of course, my name. I don't care about your name, just go away. You'll be the first fatality in this new war of mine, the fallen angel chuckled. Oh. Those individuals, along with the mindset. That would be cool. I mean, if you're having trouble with high school students, I don't think you're that impressive, what would everyone think? He saw the crazed expression in his eye and the sinister feelings this fallen angel was harboring. The fallen angel snarled. You would be wrong, you little maggot. I've only been toying with them. There's no use in utilizing my full power. Oh, yeah, the whole, I was only pretending to be weak, is so much better. Kurama laughed and said, your sass has only gotten better since you've arrived here. For that, he had to thank Rias. Once more, the fallen angel, whose name Naruto didn't even know or care about, snarled. In his hand, a spear of light formed. I'll show you. This place will be nothing but a crater. Very similar to the lightning spear in that game, huh? Then it expanded, and Naruto had to give the man some credit. He had a small contribution to make to the conversation. Whoever you are, that won't be happening. You made the biggest mistake. You see, the only one allowed to hurt Rias Grimori would be me. Issei whispered, you get to do that kinky stuff too. Now's not the time, you perv. Naruto could create a technique that is even more powerful. Oh, but he didn't want to kill the guy, so there was no need to act so immature anymore. This was the initial motivation behind his acquisition of his father's method. Kakashi once told him that at least some subtlety was required. More significantly, a seal was visible on the palm of Naruto's hand when he took off the bandages covering his hand, exposing the white prosthetic underneath. A barrier materialized in front of Naruto as he raised his hand toward the fallen angel and said, "Go flaunt your power someplace else." What was his father's name for it? Somehow, Thunder God guiding, something, was involved. Near enough. It was too complicated to remember, but it was cool. When the fallen angel threw his spear, he came across Naruto's technique and completely absorbed it as if it had never been there. Back at his dimension, somewhere in the middle of the vast, empty desert, he already knew the answer. When his spear was rendered useless, the fallen angel's expression was one of complete shock. His cue was that. Using Kurama's chakra, Naruto leapt to the spot where the fallen angel was flying. Kurama pounded down with Naruto's fist. The man was hurled into the ground below, where he choked on his scream. Before the fallen angel could get away, Naruto grabbed him and covered him in Kurama's chakra, making it difficult for him to flee. Naruto raced down below in the crater that had formed. He continued to be conscious, and Naruto disregarded his numerous insults. People in online games had called him worse. "I don't really want to know what's going on, but is it over?" he responded. "I want to go back home." She whispered, "You were glowing, and flying without wings." Before turning to the screen, he glanced back to where Rias was leaning against the doorway. He didn't know how to carry on the discussion. She kept staring at him for several minutes while Rias remained silent. Despite his repeated glances, her eyes remained fixed on him. He ignored her and kept playing the video game. Although Naruto would have preferred to claim he was good, playing video games was a new frontier for him. To acknowledge this, he died, and his gaming abilities suffered as a result of his onlooker. "Why do you keeping staring at me? It's creeping me out, and don't say I was glowing for the 7th time since yesterday." "I don't understand, were you always this powerful?" she inquired. The bed pressed against her extra weight, and Rias stepped forward. Her delicate arms tensed, and her hands gripped the mattress's edges. He died again and held back a sigh, saying, "I haven't changed much since I've met you." She questioned, "You hadn't trained of any sort?" "Nothing meaningful." No, her fingers sank further into the cushion, and her hair obscured her features. He scowled and went on after noticing these details and passing away with his thoughts elsewhere. "I don't understand it," Rias said, ignoring the chaotic nature of the action as she stared at the screen. Reviving you shouldn't have worked, and even if it did, it should have taken more pieces to do so." He had to occasionally glance down at the controller, but it was slow for him. As in, they became creatures that were merely a shadow of their former selves. "Ajuka told me it was more like the early prototypes where it didn't work or failed," she said. Sears had alluded to the possibility that it was related to his chakra. Rias remarked, "My brother explained it to me. It was only fitting that Sears would tell her what they had discovered. The restrictions didn't apply to." To which he replied, "Yes, I was there, Rias." What he did know was that there were theories but no real answers to his problems. Some of which might or might not turn him into a terrible monster or kill him. He played without complaining, but he died again. Kurama asked, "You noticed it, haven't you?" "Depends on what we're talking about." "The relationship between your chakra and the need for you to be near Rias." Naruto remarked, "Oh, that, I've only figured it out yesterday." It was difficult not to. Naruto gave the captive to a stranger without question after another child approached him and asked for it. He didn't care that Rias had inquired about that action. After that, Naruto attempted to depart, but upon returning to the apartment, he was compelled to rejoin Rias. It was only after he had fought that the distance had affected him. He was forced to wait in the club's room while Rias handled the fallout. Kurama answered, "I had some thoughts, but I wanted to make sure." "Wish you shared it with me," he whispered to himself. He missed some of the words that Rias said. "What?" "I said, I don't know how to fix this. It's okay, you tried, it didn't work out. What was important was the attempt. He learned a few things, but he had a few more chances. I'll continue trying then, until you're back to normal." Rias responded. She watched him play while resting her chin on her hands. There was no way to return to normal until his condition no longer affected him, was there? It wasn't until he respawned that Naruto realized he was dead. So other than that, anything else? Her voice rose with emotion as her gentle eyes met his. As for yesterday, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for protecting us all. There's only so much gratitude that I can show you. Naruto wandered around the game's world, but without a purpose. It was nothing. You say that, but it means very much to me. He tried to concentrate on playing the game, but he was silent because he had lost his sense of direction. Words poured from his mouth as he clutched his controller, nearly breaking it. Rias, you're intense sometimes. How else am I supposed to take those pretty smiles and gratitude? It wasn't long ago when I called you names and you would defend yourself or say how this is how you saw things. It was so much easier before then. Naruto raised his eyebrows. You think my smiles are pretty? To be honest, he wasn't entirely sure what he had said. I didn't say that. That's what you take from this. And I did not say that. I think I said Uzumaki-kun had a soft heart before. You're so damn weird. Perhaps, she said, smiling as she looked at the screen. Are you even hungry? I guess, he said, then died again. He hadn't felt like playing since he had begun, but he had no idea what else to do. She swept a stray hair from her face and smiled slyly, saying, I'm cooking something, I'll hope you enjoy it. As she hurried through the door and shut it, he remained silent. Yeah, a weirdo, he said. Once more she came, but instead of watching him play, she wandered the room, which was empty except for a few items he had gathered. You once said I don't know much, Rias hummed. Yes. How about it? You're right, but I want to know more about you. His controller nearly fell out of his hand. You're really stubborn. Her mouth opened as though she was about to speak, but she stopped, grinned, and continued, saying, This is the first time I've been in your room. Well, you just barged in here. He was positive, and he looked suspiciously, saying, I don't think so, it is my home too. She was beaming today, and as the door closed behind her, she vanished down the hall once more. It's true that she had taken care of him, fed him, and done pretty much everything else. He told himself, whatever, it's not my room anyways. She didn't come back for a long time, but when she did, she walked in with a steaming bowl and a big smile on her face. The door was open, and he could smell the scent coming in from anywhere. Ta-da! I created your preferred Uzumaki-kun, which is ramen. He concluded, fighting the impulse to snatch it from her fingers as she giggled and his stomach rumbled. Take it, I made it just for you. As she left again, he held it in his hands and he could almost taste it, his mouth watering, and it smelled great. He couldn't recall the last time he had the dish, and he couldn't find any kind of ramen shop around town that served real cooked ramen, not the instant kind, which was his favorite. Rias came back with her own bowl and sat next to him. Her eyes showed how happy she was, but she didn't explain why. Naruto thanked the food briefly before tentatively trying the ramen, then began to eat it. He slurped, and the broth spilled, leaving the bowl empty in no time. With her bowl still full, Rias said, I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Naruto cleared his throat and said, Now ramen after bentos? Are you attempting to use food to communicate with me? What if I am, too? What was said by that individual? Attempting to soften that heartless, icy heart. You're so lame. However, I am already aware of Uzumaki-kun's goodness. I'm not required to. Hey, I'm a goner too, but we still don't know if you die. I'm a self-centered individual. You don't think that's true? Thanks for the ramen. He had no answer. It was a little annoying to hear her say, I think that's the first time you said thank you without it being sarcasm. She laughed once more, was happy, and was beaming and smiling today. Get out of my room. His eye twitched. She couldn't help but smile and look amused. You don't think that's true, do you? Shut up. Issei was sitting across from Naruto, who interrupted, saying, Wait, hold on. They were in the club's room. Did I hear that correctly? Kaneko, tell me, did I hear correctly? Yes, asshole, the degenerate pervert really is more of a depraved and filthy pervert. That's no such thing for a person as cute as you should say, Issei responded. You know, being harem king. What? Naruto's expression was adorable but perplexed. Hi. Class devils usually have a harem, if they so wish, it's common, Rias said, interrupting. You're telling me that's typical? Hold on. Naruto said. His face widened and he turned to the self-proclaimed pervert. So Issei? You want to be a regular devil? Well, a dream is a dream, but what happens next? I suppose it would be quite simple if Rias said it was normal. I don't know, but I don't think it will be easy. There was little indication that he approved of her desire to harem, so Rias pondered his feelings toward it and hoped he had no interest in pursuing one. She broke out of her reverie when Naruto moaned and buried his face in his hands. Rias was unsure of his motivation. "Knock yourself out, I'm not gonna stop you, but I'm sure as hell ain't gonna help you," he said. "Haven't I said that before?" "Senpai, thank you, I thought a man like you would get it." "No, I'm not sure I understand, however, you do, my friend. I only need that approval." After bringing a tray of sweets into the room, Akeno approached Kaneko and said, "Ah, Uzumaki-kun, I made these especially for you." "Nice." Naruto grinned and reached for one, his eyes gleaming. Given that Naruto had never expressed such gratitude for her and that she had prepared bentos and even ramen for him, Rias felt a twinge of jealousy in her chest. She bit her lip to contain her speech because, after all, Naruto wasn't hers. She waved a finger playfully as Akeno held the tray out of his grasp, saying, "No, let me." When Rias noticed that she was holding bite-sized cookies in the shape of a heart, Akeno leaned forward, winked, and gave him a cookie. Naruto blushed, and a scolding fired that was so raw and pure that she was unable to speak anymore. "You're lying, senpai. You are an assailant," Issei shouted. "Now say what?" "I did not take any action." Everyone looked at the retreating form of Issei as he shot outside the club door, with the exception of Kaneko, who showed no interest. Rias recoiled from his outburst, and she could thank Issei for interrupting what she was about to say. "Geez," Naruto whispered, "Issei should calm down and believe me." With a frown similar to Naruto's everyday expression, a girlish figure entered the open door. Her new rook, Zenobia, was wearing a girl's school uniform rather than a suit, and she asked, "Who done this to my former partner's childhood friend?" "Mouthful," muttered Naruto. Akeno smiled and said, "It was Uzumaki-kun." Zenobia's eyes widened as she gazed at Naruto's face, and he stuffed cookies into his mouth, destroying any sense of intimidating persona that may have been evoked by his previous achievements. Even Rias found it odd to witness Naruto's attempt to speak, but crumbs flew from his mouth. She had expected more of the personality that he had displayed since his arrival. "Oh," said Zenobia. "What Uzumaki-kun might be trying to say is that my little pawn is like that," Rias said, her face flushed with lingering jealousy and rage, along with thoughts of Naruto as a person. Keep it in perspective. Before he began eating the cookies once more, Naruto hummed in agreement, "This is really good." Zenobia muttered, "I see. Hello, I was wondering when you might be here. I hope you're having a good first day here." Rias inquired. Naruto was the special case because she hadn't been bothered by the brief distance experiment she had done with Zenobia in the morning. As she sat on an empty love seat, Zenobia said, "It is, thank you." She wasn't the epitome of comfort, but she was doing well because she had just been an exorcist 3 days prior. "So, you had someone like this under your command this entire time? And it seems he's powerful," Rias said, looking to Naruto for a response, but he was unconcerned. "He's a part of my peerage, yes." "You were unaware?" "I did not," Naruto said, "given that I was unable to inquire. Why turn into a devil?" When Akeno sat down next to him, their knees touching, Rias scowled. "I discovered that the biblical god, Ow, is dead after being excommunicated from the church I had spent my entire life in. There is nowhere else for me to go." Rias was relieved when Naruto blinked and remained silent, saying, "Oh, that's rough." He sat back with a thoughtful expression and hardly reacted to any of Akeno's advances. "Aren't you even more powerful than you demonstrated?" With a glimmer of interest behind her eyes, Zenobia inquired. "I guess," he said without much interest, "I really wanted to remain human, not become a devil." His words, delivered in a matter-of-fact manner, were free of malice. He drank a cup of tea that had been provided to him. Interesting. From there, the little conversation deteriorated until Naruto, grinning bigger than ever, bounded out of the sofa and out the door without saying a word. "Where is he heading?" Akeno inquired. The peerage that had gathered in the room stepped behind her, and by the time she left the building, he had already turned around a corner. "I don't know," Rias said, and she followed him, but at a slow pace that befitted a respectable devil like herself. When she sensed a nearby energy that he sped toward, Rias realized why it might be. It felt familiar, like Naruto's own, and she hurried her step, figuring it must be significant. A small group of students and teachers watched in confusion as she turned more corners and eventually caught sight of a huge sphere-shaped structure that had appeared in the school's courtyard. It was a sight to behold, especially for those who were not of supernatural origin. They needed to make this right. The source of the power and portal, a man with raven hair, stood idly in front of Naruto, his eyes fixed on him. The stranger was wearing a shabby poncho, and there was a layer of snow all over his face and clothes. This person was someone Naruto knew. He raised his arms in the air and said, "Hey, what on earth are you doing here, Sasuke?" When Rias walked up to the pair, Sasuke glanced at her briefly before focusing on the blonde, and in the moment she saw his eyes, one of them was gray and rippled. "Kakashi asked me to retrieve whatever situation you got yourself in. Did he just now? You were quite concerned about me, weren't you? I can drop you off exactly where you are, TCH. Sasuke said, "Let's go, I have things to do." Naruto scratched at the back of his blonde hair and said, "Ah, you see, I'm in troublesome situation here." "Then let me simplify it for you," sighed Sasuke. "Either we both go now, or you stay and I go. I will not hold out." When you put it that way, that's an easy one. Hold on, what was Naruto going to do? A satisfied expression came on his face as he removed his jacket and tossed it into the portal. "I know morons when I see them." When Rias heard the next words, she took a step. Naruto, despite the insult, stepped forward with his back to the portal and faced everyone. As if to say, it was them, against everyone else. "Will you follow my example?" With a straightforward glance and a sardonic grin, Naruto stopped her dead in her tracks. A flash of gold, and before she knew it, a big golden hand had seized her and drawn her in. "You. Uzumaki-kun. What are you doing?" "Making my own decision, we're checking out my home for once." His house? Everyone in her peerage, with the exception of Zenobia, rushed forward to step in and stop it. She saw that Sona Citri, her rival, had also shown up, but she was already aware of the result. "No, stop." The knights arrived first, and Kiba, with his sacred gear activated, appeared with a sword in his grasp. Rias ordered, but he was disregarded. Then Sasuke let out another sigh and said, "You'll deal with the consequences afterward." Anyway, the knights were flung backward by an unseen force that collided with the others pursuing them, and Kiba and Sona's own knight both froze in midair, their faces etched with surprise, in response to Naruto's response. What was that? Fortunately, none of them were injured. "Hey, why are you worried?" Naruto said. "Rias will be with me after all." She closed her eyes nervously as he drew her closer and they both dove into the portal. The cold, stinging air entered her lungs, and when her eyes opened, the brightness blinded her. The warm grip around her body suddenly relaxed, and she fell into the snow, where the ice burned her exposed skin and she flew away from the snow, but it was deep, and her feet were still in the snow. "Wherever we are, the air is sweet. Where are you going, Sasuke? You two haven't seen one another in over a year, and you're leaving like that?" She shivered from the cold, but neither of them seemed to mind. Rias heard Naruto's loud voice echoing around her, so she squinted and strained to see his form until her eyes adjusted. "Away, I'm sure you can find yourself back to the village. As for me, I'm continuing where I left off." The only answer Sasuke gave was a small hand gesture without turning around. Peeved, trying to be cool all the time. Naruto said, crossing his arms and glancing at the person he knew. "All right, see ya I guess." The trail of Sasuke's footprints was left behind after he vanished into the dense snow. Rias located Naruto's jacket, which he had thrown, and wrapped it around her to protect her from the blizzard's bite. The jacket smelled like him, was too big for her, and was strangely comforting even though she had been all but kidnapped. Nevertheless, she knew Naruto wouldn't harm her. Naruto went back to her, but before they could exchange words, someone collapsed on the ground next to her, gasping from the unexpected cold. "Who would follow us at all?" "Issei," Naruto whispered. "Senpai, what are you doing?" Issei held himself warm while kneeling on the snow. Naruto grabbed him by the jacket collars and said, "What am I doing? What are you doing? Return." Issei answered, "Not before you tell me." Rias was moved by his concern, but she wasn't sure what he was attempting to achieve. "Now that Rias is in my custody, you're behaving like I'm the villain. She can teleport back there, after all." Then, if she teleported back, Naruto would experience something that made her feel nauseous. "Uzumaki-kun is right. Go back, I'll be fine. Tell the others the same," Rias said, deciding to speak because Issei always seemed to pay close attention to what she had to say. If you're sure, bucko," she answered, absolutely certain. Naruto gave her a quick look before turning to Issei. It seemed to make Naruto happy wherever they were, and his smile had not even been replaced. It was the most appropriate expression for him, and if it would improve and strengthen their relationship, then so be it. "You see?" Before Issei could say another word, Naruto pushed him back into the portal and he stared at it until he vanished a few moments later. "Is this where you call home?" Since a skirt was not the best at protecting her legs from the wind and the air that was gnawing at them, Rias stammered from the cold and drew Naruto's coat closer. Not exactly, but I get what you're asking. We're in another dimension, like yours. Another dimension? Rias hadn't considered Naruto's origins outside of the underworld, even though she had believed he was a special character with a special power. With a warm hand on her shoulder, he walked over and said, "You'll see in just a moment." Then he vanished. She blinked, searching all over but finding nothing. Uzumaki-kun. Another chill. He had attempted this previously, but the result remained the same. Why? Rias felt his chest rise and fall, his hot breathing blowing down her neck, and she shivered again, but this time it wasn't from the cold wind. Naruto was like a furnace, and it was very cold. He stumbled onto her again, but she caught him before he could fall into the snow, and she held him in her arms, most of his weight pressed against her. How awful it must be to be this way, to have his body against him. Rias had promised to cure this affliction of his, and she would keep her word. When he eventually got up by himself, she freaked out, but a smile remained on his face. Whoa! She was unsure of the reason behind his twitching and irritated gaze before it vanished once more. Anyway, she said, "I can't believe I forgot about this." Well, what are we going to do now? Rias asked. Her legs were shaking now, and she couldn't stop it. Her body trying hard to find any sort of warmth. He was silent, his eyes closed. Uzumaki-kun? We take the flying route, of course. His eyes opened, revealing an unfamiliar orange that had taken the place of his usual blues. Naruto's hands were warm, so warm, and as they flew higher, the winds grew harsher and the temperature dropped further, causing Rias to lose sensation in her legs and have to breathe with the wind. Rias yelled as Naruto scooped her up bridal style and charged into the white sky through falling snow. Hey, I'm going to drop you, so stop moving. Through the howling winds that rushed past them, Naruto screamed. Rias wrapped her arms around his neck and her legs to touch him as much as she could, saying, No you won't, and it's cold. All he could say was, oh. He straightened up, his hand extended, and a yellow ball appeared in it before it turned red and heated up. This help? She gazed at the sphere while he held the lava in his hand, and she sighed with relief from the heat it released. Rias glanced at him, his orange eyes fixed forward. She said nothing more, and he said nothing either. Yes, thank you. Naruto could be sweet when he wanted to be. It would be easy to act sultry, but it didn't seem as simple to act that way with him. It might have the opposite effect. She wanted more of this because she was grateful for what he had done. At times like this, Rias wasn't sure how to act around him. He had expressed his frustrations clearly. In a sense, he was unpredictable, it was complicated. They were no longer in the freezing, capped mountains, but the air was still cold, and although she could have flown herself, she would have preferred not to, and Naruto also appeared to have forgotten that fact. There it is, Naruto said, his adorable smile still intact. When Rias looked down, he saw a big village surrounded by a big wall that encircled the entire village. The most striking feature was the busts of 6 people that were carved from the side of the mountain that overlooked the village. The village was set in a sea of forest green. This must be your house, right? Yes, it is. They didn't say anything else until they came down and came to a halt in front of a big gate that opened into the village. Naruto released her, and as she stretched, her bones cracked from inactivity. Before she caught up, Naruto took a few steps ahead of her and said, "It's nice to see it after months away." When she glanced at him, Rias saw that he stood with his shoulders relaxed and his face free of frown lines. If this wasn't the quintessential illustration of comfort, then... With a bounce in his step, he strode forward, and Rias trailed closely behind him. Whatever happened, it would matter because Rias was positive that no one else knew about this other dimension or else she would have heard about this location. "Where are we?" she inquired. As they got closer to a gate, she saw 2 men in a kiosk. The village hidden in the leaves. As they got closer, the 2 men in the kiosk called out to them. "Oh," one of them remarked, "looks like the hero has finally returned from his mission." "Mission? Hero? Goal?" Naruto whispered. "Indeed, Hokage. Sama mentioned that you were on a mission. Additionally, you were instructed to report right away and without delay upon your return." "Right." With a layer of bandages covering his navel bridge, the other man asked, "Who's that?" Naruto said, "Don't worry about it." "Ah, I see, mission related. What with the get up?" "Hey," said the other man next to him. "Let them go, they need to see Hokage, Sama." "Right, sorry." Naruto entered the village with a thoughtful expression. Which titles were these? This Hokage, whoever he was a leader. "Right, let's go see Kakashi." "Kakashi? Is he not the Hokage they spoke about?" "Same person." Naruto also knew who he was. Her knight was who? The man referred to him as a hero. But why? What had she wandered into? This whole other life? Why were people jumping from rooftop to rooftop in a casual manner? As Naruto soared toward the mountain, she was lifted up again. From below, several kids let out a cry. They yelled inaudibly and called Naruto's name a few times. A building stood at the foot of the mountain, with a wall enclosing the property and a banner adorned in front. They slowed their descent, seemingly heading for this, but instead of stopping on the ground as they had previously, they passed through an open window on the upper floor. An irate voice said, "Take the door next time." Okay. She checked to make sure she was appropriate after they landed inside. With the mode of transportation, it was challenging to complete. No can do, besides, you and Pervy. Sage did this all the time, replied Naruto. A man wearing a mask over his face greeted her. A big white hat was set on one of the piles of papers on the desk behind which he stood. Hello there, it seemed Naruto had been busy, wherever he was. Naruto said, "Oh, it's a complicated story. This is Rias, this is Kakashi, the Hokage of the village. He's the leader." Rias bowed, repeating words she had said numerous times before. "Hello, Hokage. Sama. I am Rias Gremory, a pure blood devil, and heiress to the Gremory clan, one of the remaining 72 pillars. Good afternoon, Gremory. Sama. You may call me by your preference. Please, take a seat. I want to extend a welcome to you as a guest to my village. Naruto, take a seat, because it does seem complicated." Rias took a seat in one of the two chairs, while her personal savior, albeit a reluctant one, occupied the other. Naruto had a thoughtful look on his face. Naruto grinned and said, "Nice to see you again." Today, he was beaming with joy. She received a look that said, "It's nice to have one of my ninja return from whatever situation he seemed to have gotten himself into." Ninja? The Hokage had spoken to her before she had a chance to consider it. "I hope you don't mind waiting for Naruto to explain." "It's fine, I do not mind." "Okay, Naruto. Start at the beginning, because you weren't assigned on a mission when you disappeared." Kurama whispered, "I've been waiting for this." Ignoring the fox, Naruto went on explaining everything without being interrupted, starting with the first time he saw Rias, evil pieces, and so forth. All of the things he remembered. After some time, he eventually stopped. Kakashi asked, "How exactly did you get injured?" His expression was emotionless, making it impossible for Naruto to decipher his thoughts. That, he said with a frown. He had to tell Rias of all people, and this was too complicated and embarrassing. Kakashi waited with his arms crossed. "I was experimenting with my dad's technique, when, I tried, to do something that didn't include the seal, which made me end up at where Rias' dimension was." They were staring at him. "What? It's hard to explain. Okay. I almost died, because all the chakra I had was spent, even Kurama's. Since I was practicing with Kunai, I sorta, accidentally stabbed myself when I landed." Rias stated, there was a crater, but he could not see any mockery or laughter in her eyes. "I fell very fast, and hard." He felt nauseous at the memory. He became aware that he was falling 1 second, and then he found himself in a crater. "I suppose that explains everything, but," Kurama said, "Oh, here it comes." He laughed inside. He questioned, "What?" but got no answer. Kakashi said, "I'm not sure where to begin." He let out a sigh of exasperation. He felt a kind of dread that could end his life. Was it a premonition, but would it begin the next second? He had not given it any thought, and he had skipped over something that was going to kill him. The Hokage, a pervert and former teacher, turned to face him. Throughout the years he had known him, Kakashi had given him a lot of looks, whether they were ones of pride, sorrow, or joy, but nothing was ever as obvious as the look of disappointment. He had never looked so disappointed. Kakashi spoke with a firm tone. "Regardless of your feelings toward your situation, you did not handle this in a way befitting of a de facto representative of the Leaf, as well as the Alliance. This is not how you treat other foreign powers." It was nearly silent at the time, but Naruto could hear Kurama's loud, constant cackling. Naruto stated, "Why? You knew about this?" "Knew? Of course, the first moment we figured out we were in another place." "Why didn't you tell me about this?" Kurama remarked, "It wouldn't be as funny." As funny? Naruto had not even given this something the slightest thought. He felt so overwhelmed and consumed by shame that he wanted to hide in a corner and remain there. It was not finished. "Since this is a diplomatic issue that you raised," Rias cut in, "this isn't entirely his fault." Her outburst caught Naruto off guard, and he didn't know what she was attempting to accomplish. "He's done some good too. He helped me with a personal matter, as well as stopped a potential war from occurring." He couldn't speak because he was so shocked. He had mistreated this girl, and she had stood up for him. Rias, she gave him a beseeching glance. Despite him being from here, he's a part of my peerage too, so he's aligned with me. It's also my fault, as I'm the one who ignored his refusal. If I had listened, none of this would have happened. Rias stopped and took a deep breath. His school jacket was still around her as she gripped the hems of her skirt. There was silence for a moment, then it ended. Kakashi let out a sigh. I guess, Naruto, is still Naruto. You didn't mention this? Kakashi responded. In response, Naruto said, I didn't know. Neither the war he prevented nor the devil's system of power were clear to him. I suppose it does help. He turned his chair to look out the window and then started talking again. This is a matter that I can only speak for myself. I'll convene a 5-cage summit. Really? Inquired Naruto. Was it really that large? Yes, for now. Considering your situation, I'm appointing you a temporary liaison until the Alliance selects an official candidate. So, take this as a mission to repair any broken bridges. We do not want to make any enemies here. You're giving me a mission? Did you expect a punishment? That will come after. Now, the two of you should get some rest. Gremory. Sama, I hope you won't mind staying here several days before you return. The answer from Rias was, not at all. He was still ashamed and was unable to look at her. I can arrange a hotel for your stay if you wish. No, that's fine. I can stay with Naruto, we've shared an apartment together. There's also the chance of his affliction that might bother him, Rias said. Kakashi gave nod. Good, you may leave. I'll send someone for you tomorrow. As they strolled through the village, Naruto remained silent. The frown had taken the place of the smile. It was a sad one, not the irate one she was used to seeing. The bounce was gone, and his energy had diminished. Last time, it seemed to work, so she would wait. He had talked as if nothing had happened between them, even though she had started it. Maybe she ought to follow suit. Rias trailed after him, admiring the distinctive streets. There were numerous small details to observe: sculptures, artwork, signs, and other items. She seemed to have traveled back in time to Japan. The streets were devoid of obtrusive automobiles and tall skyscrapers. However, a peculiar blend of technology was strewn throughout. People flocked to Naruto as soon as they saw him, and they greeted each other with a cheerfulness she wasn't used to. They had requested a brief photo or an autograph. Despite what had happened earlier, Naruto would agree and smile. That smile, however, fell short of his eyes. But the more they walked, the more at ease he grew. She hoped that this had not altered their relationship because she had another thought. They arrived at an apartment quickly, and based on the building's exterior, it appeared to be a costly one. Before he produced a key from his pocket, they went through a stairwell and made their way to the complex's highest point. As he entered, he left the door open, and she shut it after him. She removed her shoes the same way he removed his sandals. He said, "Here we are." He stood by one of the big windows and gazed out over the village. The busts of the Hokage were visible, and Rias identified the sixth as belonging to Kakashi. "From your place to mine." She laughed and said, "That's true, now I'm the guest." She placed his jacket on top of a couch. He did not respond. She kept looking out as she noticed him leaning against the window frame. Now that they were alone once more, she wanted to talk. She wanted to spend more time alone with him, but it was a regular occurrence. Where should she begin? There were picture frames on a desk close by as she strolled around the living room. She noticed a picture of him with 3 other people when he was younger, and there was a thin layer of dust on them. She had met a few of them today. Naruto, Kakashi, Sasuke, and a girl. 2 of the boys were grinning, but the other 2 were glaring at each other. Rias said, "You're popular. Small would be a good place to start," she thought. He said, "Yeah." Without wanting to elaborate on why, she posed another query. "So, you're a ninja?" Then he grinned and said, "I sure am." "That's so cool, huh? That's explain why you're so cool." "Cool? I've been." He let out a gulp. What had happened earlier still bothered him. Thinking of his healing and resurrection, Rias said, "It's okay. We all make mistakes. No matter how well we think of ourselves." Gremory. He looked at her as she said, "No." Rias came over and repeatedly tapped his chest with his finger. "Just because of what happened, doesn't mean you must stop being mean, or call me by my name. I want the real Uzumaki-kun. We've known each other for a while now, haven't we?" After chuckling, he shook his head and said, "That's a relief." "Why is that?" "I don't know." Did he not know? It was everything, so she peered out the window to see what he might be looking at. She had previously dreaded the question, "What do you think of me, Uzumaki-kun?" because of something in his voice. Whatever they may be. The contempt had vanished as he gazed at her with those blues. "Honestly, I don't know what to think of you anymore." She was pleased that this was progress. Perhaps even more. In the future, I hope that you call me a friend. If I were to apologize to you now, it would be a lie. There was something she had worked out. Naruto didn't lie. He meant everything he said. A smile tugged at Rias's lips as she turned to face the village. She had never mentioned expressing regret. I'm looking forward to the day. Sound. He couldn't tell what it was because he was too engrossed in his sleep. He delved further into the cushions and shifted his gaze to the darkness. Children outside were crying as they fought for the hero's attention. Ignoring the sound, he went back to the sleep's lulls. He was ripped from the comfort by the knocks. It wasn't the children as he had assumed. He sat up from the couch and yawned. When he stood up and stretched, his bones cracked. He picked up the fallen pillow and put it back in place. It took him a few blinks to realize his location. His living room was this. There were small dents on his floor, his TV, and the couch he slept on. He was familiar with this place. It had been months since he had returned. More knocks, more mental disruption. Leaping from his couch, he headed for his back door, and Anbu was waiting for him. Hokage. Sama wishes to see you and our honored guest at 2, displayed on a cat mask. Thanks, he said in response. Also, it's a pleasure to have you with us again, said the person who stayed. The man nodded and leapt away. Thanks, it's good to be back, he said. One more yawn. A quick check of the clock revealed that it was almost 8 o'clock, 6 hours before his scheduled meeting with Kakashi. There was still plenty of time to visit his village and experience its pleasures. He wandered into his refrigerator in the kitchen. He nearly lost last night's dinner because whatever was in the refrigerator seeped into his nostrils. He slammed it close after gapping. Old milk, eggs, and whatever leftovers he had kept inside since he vanished were all there. It was filthy. Food cartons were scattered across the counters and table in his kitchen. Last night, they placed an order for delivery. Fortunately, nobody had opened the refrigerator. He stepped out of the kitchen and knocked on his door. Rias, get up. He went back and looked for trash that had been there for months. Anything he found that he could discard or clean later, such as containers or wrappers. It appeared that his breakfast would have to be out. He had to buy the food again because he wasn't alone and hadn't been for months. Ichiraku's, a small breakfast establishment nearby, was closed in the morning, a sad reality of life, but it would reopen later. He returned to the kitchen to make himself a cup of coffee after knocking on his door once more. While he waited, he recalled that he needed to meet with his landlord to address the matter of multiple unpaid bills. He knocked on the landlord's door after taking a brief walk down a set of stairs. When it opened, an elderly man with balding hair was seen. The man smiled brightly as he recognized something. Ah, the hero. It's nice to see you again. An eager, firm handshake. Yeah, said Naruto. I can say the same, anyway, I haven't paid the last. Oh that? No, it's fine, the Hokage himself came over and paid since you've been gone. Oh, yes, now, I was about to make breakfast, would you like some? It's okay, I have someone over right now, and I haven't seen the village in a long time, so we were going to eat out. The man rubbed his chin and smiled, a smile Naruto was very accustomed to seeing. Ah, a young, famous, good-looking man like yourself, it should happen a lot. And of course, you would want to see the village after your time away. Sure, he said, and yeah, I would. I won't keep you, he said with a laugh. Naruto muttered a few remarks about elderly men as he bid them farewell. He poured his coffee inside his apartment. He shouted, you seriously not up Rias? After knocking once more, he encircled the knob and pushed it open. He ought to have been sorry to witness it. Her hair was sprayed all over his bed, red. The appearance of soft, bare flesh. Subsequently, there was a single, large boob. Gah, he said, slamming the door shut. The heat that ran up his neck was unbearable. Why the hell are you naked? Whoa. But, ew, he detested this girl. The image was too vivid for him to forget. He heard some whispers that were inaudible to him. What? It's the only way I can sleep, she stated, dismissing the whole situation. It's very comfortable, have you tried it? No, I haven't. God, who does that? I do, every night. Whatever. Get up, I'm starving, we're going out. Oh. Okay. It took her a few moments to open the door. Since she didn't have any other clothes, she was wearing the school uniform. The skirts were so short, but why? For what reason was he whining? He went into his room without giving her a glance. After saying, don't open the fridge, he pulled out some nice clothes from the drawers. I'll buy you some clothes, then we'll eat something. You'd do that? You did the same for me, of course. Should warn you though, I'm not as rich as you, if the luxurious mansion was any guide. No, that's fine. I'm just wondering how the fashion is here. She remained at the door while he gazed at her. You can get out now. Oh, he muttered something about Rias as he changed, and the door shut. It was strange that she wasn't angry because for him, it usually ended badly. However, she was wearing a towel the last time, suggesting that she didn't mind being nude. Strange. He was probably not going to fight today at all. Instead of a sweater or jacket, casual attire would be appropriate. A shirt and dark, loose, fitting pants. He located both his wallet and his headband, which had been in the drawer. Just to enjoy how it fit around him, he wrapped it around his head. It was meant to be there. Technically, he was off duty, so it took it off, but when he returned to the other worlds, he would remember it. Sitting on the couch, Rias's gaze was fixed on the screen. He most likely looked like this when he first got to a new location. Her eyes were warm and inquisitive as she looked at him. The difference was that she didn't look contemptuous. Rias inquired, "How does this look?" She knew what boys liked, so she wore a skimpy sweater. It wasn't working here, so Naruto looked up from his phone. He remarked, "Looks okay I guess." That was all he had to say. Perhaps he liked this outfit as much as she did. It was not distinguished by anything. No shy, doe-eyed, lingering look, or even blatant staring. One more thing. He was obstinate. She would complete it with a semi-formal outfit, but she needed one more. She had enough to show the Hokage that she had enjoyed her brief stay here. Returning to the changing room, Rias put on her school uniform. "I need one more," she said, turning back to him. "Another one? I hope this one won't take as long." He laughed. She felt her heart skip a beat or two. He was content and at ease. She handed the clothes to him and said, "Carry this for me, would you?" He scowled. "Fine, this is fun, I'm already enjoying today," she said with a smile. "I'm glad to know that Rias enjoys burdening me with a heavy load." She rolled her eyes and laughed. They moved among the garment sections. "Which do you think would look best?" "No idea, I haven't seen you wear any," he said in a whisper. Naruto was focused on anything that drew his attention and wasn't really listening. It seems that Naruto has a preference for her attire. His reaction to her appearance must have been, okay, but he must have liked something about it. After all, he was still a young man, and they liked the way young women looked. A mannequin with a pink sundress caught Rias's attention. That would be ideal. Formal, elegant, and sexy, perhaps. Compared to the human world, this dimension was hotter. It would be interesting, she thought, if they were in a different season. She looked at a few designs for a short while. Are these all the stores here? I'm pretty sure this store is one of the best that I know about, otherwise, no idea. I'm a bit disappointed, he sighed. I'm sure one of the other cities in the country have better shops. This is a shinobi village after all. Oh, that would make sense. Do you have cars? Yeah, but we don't really have any roads, and they stay in the civilian cities. Strange, she said in response. Rias had picked up a few dresses to try on. Maybe he would like one of them. They made their way back to the changing rooms, saying, "Okay, I'll try them on. Can you decide which is best?" "Any of them would be fine. I need to see if they fit first." Just hurry up, I'll be quick." Unfortunately, when she tried them all on, Naruto paid little attention. It had only taken him a few glances before he responded as he always does. She did ultimately choose a couple she liked. Leading the way to the cashiers was Rias. Naruto had no trouble purchasing the garments. She had done the same thing when they first met, which was quite a role reversal. The atmosphere between them was not tense now, though. He waved in response to the calls from those around him as they left the store. When they inquired about his whereabouts, he would reply that he was on a mission. The fact that all of these individuals shared Naruto's power was something else she had observed. Or, at the very least, with the same emotion. Rias discovered a specific women's store. That would be ideal. They wandered inside. The store was comparatively crowded, with customers strolling around with their spouses and other companions. She heard a whisper and asked, "Is that him?" "Oh my god, it is, he's with someone." She looked at the disturbance and saw that it was coming from two women who were running away. Naruto didn't care to look at them, so she ignored them. Yesterday, Rias noticed that people were requesting autographs from Naruto, and she wondered why. With a slow trepidation, he asked, "What are we doing here?" She attempted to appear innocent while grinning slyly. "Well, you did say I can buy clothes, I need underwear too." He crossed his arms and glanced at a pile of immaculately hung bras, but it took him less than a breath to return his attention to her alone. He had a frown on his lips and appeared rigid. This time, the sight was familiar, but for a different reason. "I had a great time, I guess," he said, not looking totally persuaded. "What's the matter? You did see me naked already. No, I didn't. What I saw was a boob, he said, closing his mouth. His cheeks flushed. She had been searching for this. She chuckled as she felt the wonderful rush of accomplishment. He remained silent while she looked through the underwear store. Rias checked her weight. Naruto walked slowly behind, unsure of where to look. He spoke once more. That wouldn't have happened if you woke up when I told you so, and if you didn't sleep like that. Naked, you mean? Words sparked. Yes, naked, but she was hesitant to say it. After all, there were still problems in their relationship. A few inappropriate words, beyond innocent, would cause it to shatter. I'm very comfortable with my body. That sounds very, what's the word? I mean, I want everyone to see me. He sighed, shook his head multiple times, and spoke. Weirdo. Aren't you hungry? I'm starving. Her response was, a little. The subject change doesn't worry me. Then you should hurry up. She was about to respond that he was eager to see his friends, but then she recalled that it took time. This should be completed as soon as possible. If she occupied all of his time, he wouldn't be the best. Rias picked up a few things that were her size and gave them to him. Why? You want me to carry them? It would help, she said with a grin. These are big. Shut up, he said, turning away. Why are you taking a couple of the same? Well, I have to see if they're comfortable, and every bra has. He shook his head and said, geez, why did I even ask? I didn't think it would be this complicated. She picked up a couple that matched her skin tone, a few that were lacy, and several others. To try them on, she entered the changing room. She considered asking him to go with her, but she knew that would cause their already fragile relationship to deteriorate. She overheard women talking excitedly, laughing, and swooning over someone. After getting dressed, she went back to him. Several girls were pawing at him from all around him. It really is you. Wow, you can call me however you want. Circa, can I get an autograph please? Like he'd done it 1,000 times, Naruto smiled effortlessly and exuded the same enthusiasm as the girls who swooned over him. Nice to meet you. You're from Cloud? How is B doing nowadays? I haven't seen him a long time. She was unaware that Rias had approached him and taken his arm. They stopped, and Naruto turned to see who had seized him. I'm finished. After signing a hat, he smiled and turned back to a girl. Great, I've been itching for some good food. I'll see all of you later, he said. Rias stifled a grin. She pondered their possible responses, but she had no intention of turning around. So those statues on the monument, they're the Hokage? Rias inquired. A total of 6. His blue eyes glistened with admiration as he cast a quick glance at the statues. Yep, except the last 2, the other ones aren't with us anymore. A waiter approached them, his eyes moving, and the glasses tray he was holding quivered. Here's your juice. Thanks. Thank you. Is there anything else you both need? A couple nod quickly. Nah, he said. After nodding, the man left to serve the other patrons. Her lips formed a question, one that required an answer. He asked, you see that 4th one? Once more, Rias glanced up at the statue of a man with long hair that hung down to his cheeks. That's my dad. There was no longer his father. As she gazed at the bust, blonde with blue eyes, she could see his father. Naruto got his whiskers from where? You're proud of them all. Of course, he said brightly. The patio that belonged to the restaurant caught her attention. A pleasant sun and a light breeze. It wasn't that. People looked in their direction all the time. One murmur, the next a whisper. His words were, don't pay them any mind. She took a deep breath. She wanted to discuss this subject. You're famous, aren't you? Yeah, he said, dismissing it. What did you do? They had referred to him as a hero many times. He grinned. I'm a pretty great ninja. She waited for him to go on, but he remained silent. Naruto Uzumaki is a well-known ninja. It created such a turbulent, uneasy sensation in her stomach. However, awe had also taken hold. How did he win the people's affection? She wanted the answer to another question. That doesn't bother you? Why should it? What do you mean by that? He asked, blinking. A young man like him should be able to enjoy the company of attractive women on a regular basis. She believed he would have recognized her stance. What? But how? He shrugged repeatedly. Suddenly, the common ground she may have discovered began to fall apart. Doesn't bother me. After arriving, the waiter set the table with their breakfast. They didn't want anything when he asked if they needed anything. She could not start talking to him again until he had gone. So, it doesn't bother you that they refer you as epithets, that, no matter what you do, and what you say, they'll always see you as an image that's not really you. Her hands gripped her thighs tightly, and she leaned closer without realizing it. Naruto had not been listening. He chewed his food, leaned back, and gazed at the streets while concentrating on the omelet. Epithet? Hero, or crimson? Haired ruined princess, she said, finding the pace of the conversation too slow. They were being slowed down by the food. I get it, like demon and savior, he whispered. When Naruto looked into her eyes, something changed, almost like soul gazing. So that's yours? Yes, or, other than that, just my last name, she said. Rias, I've. The sun blinded her with a little commotion as a shadow passed over them. Thought I smelled someone familiar. A man with dark skin arrived, each cheek marked with a single triangle. I'd know that terrible stench anywhere, he said, riding a big dog. Kiba. I thought something smelled like dog, Kiba smiled and said, that's a compliment if I ever heard one. The big, white dog barked. Naruto chuckled and said, I wouldn't forget about you, Akamaru. He got out of his chair and stroked the dog under its chin. Another interruption of their conversation caused Rias to frown. With some hope, it might go on. Been a while, so where have you been, oh great savior? Kiba chuckled. Glad that the others got you back. It's good to be back, but what do you mean by others? The Hokage sent a team after Sasuke. What? I didn't notice anyone else other than him. Who was part of the team? So, you're saying something slipped past the hero? Shut up about the hero stuff. Sakura, Hinata, and Shino were sent after him, Kiba said with a laugh. They kept talking to each other while Rias sat there. She was not introduced to his friend by Naruto. He laughed, joked, and smiled. Akamaru, the dog, was her only companion. He barked, sniffed the air, stared at her, and performed other canine behaviors. Oh, and who's this lovely lady? Sorry I didn't introduce myself earlier, Kiba said with a charming smile as he finally noticed her. Oh, right, it's fine. You haven't seen your friends in a long while, Rias replied. She's from another dimension, and she's the sister to one of their leaders, Naruto said when introducing them both. Kiba remarked, oh, that explains the odd smell. Naruto whispered, believe me, that's not the most strange thing about her. Kiba looked at them both with a more nervous expression. Rias said, do I smell weird? Sorry, Kiba said. You smell good. There's just something weird attached to it. I would guess a weird energy. It happens. He could smell that. Oh, he said. Kiba returned his focus to Naruto. So, your job is to be like Shikamaru then? Yeah, I guess so. Where is he by the way? Naruto said, blinking. Before they were introduced, Kiba appeared more formal and reserved. In the stone, the Chunin exams just ended, he said. Anyway, I got a mission to start. You're leaving too? There's gotta be some of my friends here. The life of Ninja EH. I'm sure Lee is around somewhere. See you, and you too Gremory, said Kiba. Rias and Naruto bid her farewell. Come on Akamaru. They exclaimed as they leapt to the rooftops and vanished. What's the matter? She asked, and Naruto swore. Even Kiba noticed, and I thought he was a bigger moron than me. Rias chose to say nothing about it. How could it not be something that was still on his mind? It took place yesterday. As you were saying earlier before we got interrupted? Huh? I forgot. Rias sighed. Epithets. We were talking about epithets. A name to be married into. It doesn't matter who even carries it, because that's all you are. Naruto's eyes changed as he gazed at her. It was better than the hate, but she wasn't sure if it was better or worse. I've been called a lot of things in my life. Yeah, the names used to bother me, but it doesn't anymore. Honestly, it's better to be referred with a name. Other than what? Oh, nothing, shrugged Naruto. Grinning, he turned back to the Hokage monument. Did he say nothing about it? What an odd location to end it. Besides, people know a little, and the more they find out about me, the less they'll call me hero. You don't know devils then, he smiled. Was he like this? Someone with lovely, radiant smiles. I do know people, and I don't see any difference between devils and fallen and people. Don't let the devils catch you saying that, he sighed and said, crap, you're right. You're not looking forward to this, aren't you? Let's just say, being Hokage is still out of reach for me, a moment's thought. For now, at least. I'll help you, you know that right? Said Rias, leaning forward. Thanks, he said, glancing around before raising a hand. Hey, we're finished here. Rias's gaze lowered to her plate. At what point did she finish her meal? I hope your day in the village went well. She was dressed differently than she had been yesterday, and Kakashi noticed that she was wearing a white summer dress. She needed new clothes, and Naruto had the grace to get them. He did a good thing by doing that. Wonderful, it's a beautiful place, Rias curtsied. He invited them both to sit down. As they worked, Kakashi took a folder out of a drawer and set it in front of his ninja. This is for your assignment. In the meantime, I would like to discuss with our guest in private. Naruto picked up a folder and nodded. Sure, I'll be around. Ask Rias to get me back if you need me. He vanished. It was odd to see Naruto employing Minato's own method, as they say, like father like son. According to Kakashi, this will be a long discussion. There was a hint of nervousness in the girl, he thought. An important one. What are we going to discuss? Several things. I think it's best to head off with a heavier topic first, then, if you wish, share some information about our respective dimensions. He drank some water. This is to smooth the process of future diplomacy. That would make sense. What would you like to talk about first? Naruto, she said, her lips pursed. Kakashi went on. There's a few things I want to say. During today, I'm sure you have noticed that Naruto is held in high opinion in the public eye. I've noticed that, yes, more than a year ago, Naruto was one of the main contributors to a war effort, and even before that, he was considered a hero by the village for saving it. That, she paused, and her eyes grew wide, was not something I was aware of. He is also a ninja belonging to this village, and you have made him by every view of mine a slave. With a furrowed brow, her hand gripped the armrest more tightly. She appeared to be aware of how serious the situation was. This is a first contact between powers, and I'll take Naruto's word for it, that this was nothing more than a misunderstanding. You had good intentions, but consider this a warning to your devil faction, that we will not tolerate any more of these actions on our soil. I understand, she blurted out. I'll make sure it gets passed on. Kakashi attempted to smile reassuringly, but the mask made it difficult. Good, that is all I wish to say about that. Now, I'm sure both of us could relax now. The rest of the conversation won't be as interesting, she said. I wouldn't have done it if I knew, she said, nodding multiple times. He hoped there wouldn't be another war coming. Let's focus on things we can hope to avoid, he said. We can start at the basics. They began exchanging information. It was brief but to the point. Nations, factions, ninja, and the devils. Anything that might be significant, such as customs and culture. Kakashi remarked, I think that's enough. Another important matter is to set up a meeting between both our respective domains. According to Rias, I can carry that message. Can you call Naruto to return? With a nod, she rose from her chair. When he saw the ninja star with the seal, he laughed. After Rias tossed it to the ground, Naruto emerged a few seconds later. Minato responded faster, unless he was busy. Yo, Naruto gestured. He took the star and gave it back to Rias. I just wanted to have another quick discussion with you, Naruto, show her around in the building. Rias was released as a clone appeared next to him. With a slight frown, Naruto asked, what's up? Just a talk, he said in response. A brief, sentimental recollection went by. How about we talk on the monument above? If I remember, my teacher had a seal somewhere up there. Oh, yeah. Naruto approached him and touched his shoulder. The scene instantly changed from the confined space of his office to the thriving village. The bust of the fourth Hokage beneath him. So, this is what you have been practicing before your disappearance? Yep, when the yellow flash said, I never thought you would want to live up your father's legacy, he smiled. However, Naruto had accomplished a lot in his life already. He just had to take on the role of Hokage. No, I'm not worried about that. I don't think I'm as fast as him. I learned it for a different reason. Oh, and what is that? Naruto said, you saw it in the war. I wanted to protect my home the best I can, as he peered out into the village. Kakashi thought back to when his master had saved them. The village was destroyed by the Nine-Tails-tailed beast bomb, which was also used in the most recent conflict. I'm not sure why I'm surprised, stated Kakashi. I should have expected it. What's that epithet you called me? They chuckled and said, the number 1, unpredictable, knucklehead ninja, or at least something like that. They stared at the village in silence until Naruto broke the silence. I think it might have been longer, they said. You sent a team after Sasuke. Sakura was likely the only one who could persuade Sasuke to assist the tracker team. I did. I thought they were right behind you, she said. Must have missed them somehow, but the more I think about it, the more I think Sasuke made us appear somewhere else. That sounds like him, said Kakashi. A tiny gust of wind blew by them. He wasn't concerned. The team would come back on their own. Devils, he had to deal with this issue as well. You've met quite the fate, haven't you? With his eyes hardened, Naruto crossed his arms. Yeah. I want you to know, it's okay that you felt that way. I'm sure others would have reacted the same way. I think that's where you're wrong. I messed up, now I gotta fix it. Kakashi scowled. You know that we'll try everything in our power to get your situation under control. The fifth is in the village. I've already asked her to give you a diagnosis, we'll get it fixed. I'll do that, but never mind, it's not important right now. With a deep frown and a hand beneath his chin, Kakashi spared his pupil's eyes. If you're sure, I have no doubt the other Kage will lend their help. He was a valuable asset who did not belong to the opposing side. Gremory was a member of the Devil faction. The location of Naruto in this mess was obvious. Naruto said, I've read most of it, I get that you want to build ties but, as he held the folder. Is there anything you need? He answered, how should I act? I could use some advice. I'm a bit lost on how to handle it. Kakashi crossed his arms and said, let's see, in an attempt to formulate a coherent explanation that Naruto would comprehend. He flicked his fingers. Think of it as the Chunin exams. Not within the tests itself, but outside of it. Instead of representing the leaf, it's our dimension. You don't want to do anything that will spark a war, but you also don't want anyone to push you around. Then he sighed, that's a relief, alright, I think I got it. Suck it up, make friends, and be strong. He might be prepared in a few more years, but there's no need to hurry. Yes, I'm sure it will be fine. It just sucks that I'm stuck beside Rias at nearly all times. If I go too far, I get his horrible feeling in my chest. Not like it's gonna burst, but cave in. It just sucks. Kakashi put a reassuring hand on his shoulder and remained silent. His arms trembled, and he could see the frustration on his face. Look, there's just as much fault in Gremory as well. There's no need for you to apologize to her, in fact, I preferred if you didn't. I can't stop you though. It was important that she saw yesterday. It will find Naruto, soon, we'll find out what's wrong, and we'll fix it. Yeah, he said, inhaling. His subsequent statement, yeah, it'll be fine, had more vitality. Good, let's return. The influence of the fresh air was soothing. The sensation of someone looking back at her was gone. She concealed her relief from the blonde who followed her. He can be intimidating when he wants to be. As they entered the streets, Naruto stretched. A couple of people waved at him, and he waved back. Yeah, that's Kakashi alright, he can play the part, he grinned. When I was first placed in his team, he put a kunai to my throat. Thought I was going to die for a moment. That's terrible, asked Rias. He said, it's funny, and laughed. I think we have different tastes in humor. Well, it wasn't funny at the time, but now, it's different. They strolled down the street without saying a word. It was nearly typical. He wasn't at all upset with her, today had felt normal. She said, where are we going? We're visiting the fifth. As in, the Hokage? Yeah, he replied. In contrast to his previous behavior, she asked a lot of questions. When Naruto was transformed into a devil, he had not wanted much to do with her. Random onlookers had stopped them several times along the route. She had become accustomed to seeing that look whenever his eyes fell on her, and she never saw any annoyance. He didn't answer, aren't you tired of being called hero? It must have been nice to be called by your name in the human world. No, there's a difference, everyone calls me Uzumaki or Senpai. I find that a bit weird, but whatever, people can call me whatever they like, it doesn't really matter to me. She looked for some kind of common ground, but it was gone. It seemed to slip out from under them every time. If that's what you want, Naruto-kun, she waited for a response, but all he did was shake his head and go on. The answer was unimpressive. They continued to walk until they arrived at their destination. An enormous two-story home. There was a garden in front, and the place was lovely. Rather than knocking, Naruto entered with a smug grin and glowing eyes, as if he owned the place. He yelled, yo, Granny, we're here. As it got closer, a few steps tapped the wooden floors. And here I thought it might be a peaceful day. Rias was surprised to see how young she was. A blonde woman with a generous bust and a mark on her forehead. She said, nice to have you back with us, yup. The fifth and Rias looked at each other. It was rough and cold. I'm guessing you're Gremory? I heard you turned one of my ninja into a slave. Yes, that's one way to put it. Tsunade, the fifth Hokage. I'm Rias Gremory, a pleasure to meet you, Rias said with a bow. It was Naruto who broke the brief silence. Granny, think you can help? First of all, don't call me that in front of the guest. Second, I don't know yet, Tsunade replied. She held a cup in her hand and drank from it. Right, if you're worried about formalities, it would have been better if you weren't drinking and if the house didn't smell like sake. Before raising her voice, Tsunade muttered something under her breath. You know my fists have really missed punching things, she said. Alright, I get it, sheesh, they appeared to know one another quite well, so well, in fact, that she was unsure of how to respond. She remained silent. Come on in. As they entered the living room, Rias obeyed her orders and stood next to Naruto. The walls were adorned with paintings and photographs of either people or symbols. None of their meanings made sense to her. It smelled of sake, as Naruto had claimed, and there were a few bottles lying around the floor and coffee table, most likely empty. Get comfortable. I need to ask questions before we do anything practical. Remember, we're not here to cure you, that will come later. Yeah, both of them looked at him. You've likely already explained to the sixth, but I need to make sure of how it works. Don't leave anything out. She described the complexities of the piece that was inside his chest once more. Tsunade ordered Naruto to lie on the couch and finish some diagnostics after it was done. Take off your shirt too. He removed his shirt just like he had earlier today, but she was watching. Prior to today, Rias was unaware that he maintained a healthy lifestyle. The fifth said nothing, but his arm was still covered with bandages. Whoa. As she trailed against his chest, she pondered how hard his stomach might feel on her fingers. Her thoughts were interrupted by the green glow of Hokage's hands. She hovered over the spot where the night piece had entered his chest. She would occasionally pause to jot down a few notes before continuing on her way. The procedure ended prematurely. When Tsunade said, "I've done all I can for now," she concentrated on taking notes. Naruto dressed, but no one took notice of her. Great, what do you think? I want to make an appointment for a scan. I'll make the next available one to you. As for your question, I can't say on what I have now. It's complicated, she said. The only sound in the pregnant silence was the scratching of a pen. A deep sigh escaped past Naruto's crossed arms and tight lips as he stared. Would something similar help? Rias was the focus of the conversation. I have one last piece that you can study, if that would help at all. Saying, it would. Tsunade swigged from her bottle of sake. After a brief shake, she tossed it in a nearby trash can. Where is it? Inquired Naruto. Back in Japan. Of course it is, Tsunade said. Naruto. Mind fetching me another bottle upstairs? It's in the fridge. He shook his head and went to comply with her request. Of course, your alcohol has its own fridge, he said. Tsunade shook her head and let out a sigh. I heard you're influential. Now, what do we have here? Two kids with powerful connections. That sounds like a recipe for disaster, Rias said, assuming that this was a reference to her. Not much could be said, just, I've noticed his popularity. She chuckled, the point being, I don't care how nasty it gets between you two, just don't cause a war. That was the only thing said. After a short while, Naruto descended and threw a bottle of sake to Tsunade. I'll know more the next time, that's your cue to leave now, she said, opening the bottle and taking another sip. What? Not even going to ask me how I've been? Kakashi told me. Oh, she held up the notebook and said, it's good to see you doing well, but I'm busy too, especially with this. And drinking? That too. Rias chose to remain silent during the conversation. By the looks of Granny, they were well acquainted. After saying their goodbyes, they departed from the house. She remained silent because Naruto appeared to be deep in thought. She glanced around the village, finding plenty to interest her. The crowds that gathered at Naruto's side or the ninja's roof.to. Roof hopping are two examples. Some had claimed to have traveled great distances in order to have the chance to meet him. That was commitment. The difference was that Naruto was loved, whereas Rias had a few connections. Once he had spoken with them, Naruto would resume the pace. She had no idea where she was in all the street's twists and turns, and he was leading the way. The designs of the village didn't appear to be consistent. They entered a park where the buildings gave way to trees. There weren't many clouds in the sky, and the day was lovely. It was mostly the sounds of nature, with the distant bustle of people. Is it summer here? End of July. Strange. He seemed uninterested in carrying on this idle conversation. His voice was very clear. He inquired, did you enjoy today at all? His tone was uninterested and flat. She was unsure of how to react, especially given the frown. Yes, I did. I hope it will be like in the human world, she said. But, she forced herself to swallow. This was not a typical discussion. The small pool of terror she had harbored all day had widened, deepening every second. He paused and turned to face her. You know it, don't you? He asked. His glare left her gasping for air, so she didn't respond. Come on, he said, shaking his head, his eyes glowing with frustration. You're not stupid, just because we're not talking about it, doesn't mean it's not there. She began to say, but realized she would run out of words. Tell me, Rias, I'm sure you wondered, did you ask yourself as to why I'm so angry? Why that treated you so badly? You must know by now, if you didn't before, today and even yesterday it would be obvious. She was frozen in place by the icy coldness of his eyes. She detested that expression. She was the only one with that look after everything and everyone else. Why? Why was it that he was unable to look at her with warmth or even the tiniest amount of affection that he had for his friends? I can't speak for the other of your peerage, but I can speak for myself. You see this village, Rias, this is my home. I've taken a vow to defend it with my life, to die for anyone that lives here. I'd be happy to do any such thing for anyone here. This was my life, I'm to be Hokage one day. I'm sorry. Rias turned his gaze to his feet. She couldn't stand to see that expression in his eyes again, no matter how much he wanted it. The mere thought of it broke her heart. Not after he'd looked at her with anything but hatred, and not with the amount of progress. Please, you know that. He turned to face the village light. That's not what I hate. You know our secret, it won't be one for long. It will be short for you guys, right? What's 10 years? What's 50? Here, it's a pause, a breath. They'll know eventually. How couldn't they notice I don't age like them? I won't be normal here, and I've fought all my life for that. She sobbed. See, can you ever forgive me? It was really difficult to talk. None of this was intended by me. All of my friends, he said, his voice wavering. I will see them perish. I will attend all of their funerals, but I will not age with them. I will attend the funerals of all their children. Additionally, that is simply too cruel. I wanted to save you. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, she said, sobbing when she reached for him to say hello and he simply stepped away. Please. You must believe me when I say that I only had your best interests in mind. You must, I sincerely apologize. The last couple of days were more than just eyes full of tolerance. She wanted more than that. If she looked up, she would see another look of scorn, like all those days she had become accustomed to seeing. She detested this terrible pain, and her heart longed for it. He appeared angry, helplessly frustrated, with a terrible uncertainty, a furrowed brow, and unfocused eyes. Her vision blurred as she looked up, but it was not what she had feared. She took a trembling breath and forced herself to speak through the knot in her throat. She needed to stop crying and speak, and her words came easily and naturally. I'll never stop trying to help you, she said. I swear that I will exert every effort to ensure your happiness. Even if everything is over and you don't want to see me ever again, you don't have to forgive me. With a sigh, Naruto said, let's just go. He turned to leave. A girl from another dimension is causing me trouble. That sounds an awful like Kagaya. To pass the time, Naruto threw a kunai, which whirled in the air and was caught when it fell. He could watch TV, but the remote control was too far away on the other side of the room. Yeah, but this one is 18, a student, and squishy looking. I guess I know what things are squishy looking, since I see what you see. Inside, Naruto turned to Kurama but paid no attention. His eyes were closed and resting, lying about in the expanse of the seal. He stopped his throw, his hand tightened around the kunai's grip, the words settled, and his mind went blank. What the devil? You're not human at all. I wonder what gave that impression, Kurama said, slowly opening his eyes and yawning as the orange ear twitched. Furthermore, I've been a Jinchuriki for 2 years before you, and I've known humanity for a lot longer than you have. Right, my mom, he said, becoming motionless for a moment before a chill went through him. Great, that's something I didn't want to think about, he spat out, pulling out his hair. Kurama let out a howl of laughter, took a breath, and went on, concentrating on spinning more complex patterns in the air to get rid of any lingering, unsettling thoughts. I've seen a lot of events, true, and I've seen what you experienced. You'd forgive people for the worst things, Kurama said again, almost softly. Yes, I am aware of that, but this is just between her and me, and it wasn't harmful, was it? At least you thought it did. Even after being reminded, Naruto's head remained hot and everything was still unclear. I know I messed up, I didn't see it, he growled. Does that imply that I am not permitted to feel angry? You are fully entitled. Are you demonizing that girl, then? In a feeble voice, Naruto said, she doesn't consider herself human. Don't you think it makes things easier? I wonder if those were the same thoughts of those who hated you, Kurama remarked. You carry me, so I am you. Even so, one distinction is sufficient for the target of derision in my life and everything I've seen. Hatred is simple. He paused and hung his head as the words echoed and swirled in his mind, his fingers tapping rhythmically along the edge of the blade, and he was tempted to destroy the closest object he could find, or rather, to throw up something, but all he could manage was a few feeble words. I suppose I'm still human, aren't I? I don't hold it against you, Kurama said with a laugh, because to me, these other people, angels and devils, are the same. Indeed, there are some variations here and there. Vermin are in the air like bats and pigeons rather than scuttling around on the ground. Yeah, Naruto said, laughing, unsure of what else to say. If she hadn't told you to be yourself, would you have detested her even more? Definitely, at least she's doing some things right, Kurama snorted. Both of us are aware that you will eventually forgive her. But not today, she said, for the same reasons he did. One bright spot in all of this is that you're the second person I've grown to like, Kurama hummed. I know it won't be easy to lose you, just as losing my father wasn't. You and I will be partners for a very long time. Silence descended upon him. In fact, the only thing he could think about was the kunai he was holding. Yeah, I'm not going to repeat that. That's one way to look at it, Naruto chuckled. Unfortunately, the drawbacks were greater than the advantages, so he decided he was finally too lazy to grab the remote control and change to a random program. After a while, the door to his room creaked open, and Rias emerged wearing shorts and a tank top. She slept naked, of course, so don't worry about that thought, it won't get anywhere. He seemed to need to break the silence, as her arms were crossed defensively and her blue-dot-ish green eyes tentatively met his. Are you hungry? She nodded, saying, I'll prepare dinner for us. I can cook for myself. No, everything is all right. You're my guest, so I'll do it. He shrugged and gave her the remote. I would say honored, but you know, he said. Perhaps it eased the tension between them, but he didn't see her reaction, so he snatched up the new ingredients without thinking and made something up. Since he had become a devil, Rias had been a constant in his life, and all of the customary tense interactions were changing into uncomfortable, odd ones. As he prepared breakfast for them both, he heard the channels being switched or lingered on, and when he finished, he went back to the living room and set the table. He sat down and started eating his breakfast while her eyes remained fixed on the screen, only breaking when she thanked him. Rias watched with a cute, curious expression as one of the actors walked along the ceiling. They watched a show he knew, but he didn't recognize any of the events. He must have missed episodes. Is that what they typically do? You remind me of myself when I first came to the other world, he said, responding to more questions and making fun of her. Not any more dangerous than that, I think, he said. How? I doubt I took notice. I'm not surprised. Her mouth opened, then shut, a shift in perspective. Oh. With a sigh, Naruto set his empty plate on the coffee table and asked, do you keep your word? What? I apologize. I clearly recall you telling me that I could be myself around you, even if it meant acting like a jerk toward you. Because you didn't want to be treated rudely. I find it annoying when you open your mouth and either say nothing at all or say something completely different. So, as I mentioned, are they just words? Since you don't appear to adhere to them. You notice something like that? She asked, her eyes widening. He nodded. I see, he said, I apologize. Sometimes I'm not sure if I should say it. What fears do you have? She said softly, that things won't get better between us, and that all you'll feel for me is, with her arms crossed and her eyes turned away. He pressed his lips together and said, it doesn't mean it's not getting better, I've accepted what happened to me, and I told you how I've felt about it. Melodrama was exactly what she was looking for. Here, you're the slow one. Her hair obscured her features, and she looked away as she asked, are you saying, with an almost silent awe in her eyes? It was an odd feeling to do what he did for someone he didn't particularly like. Rias had a peculiar patience. It was fueled by the unknown. He shook his head, complained, and muttered curses. He made the decision to concentrate on the show, but he was unable to understand what had transpired. Rias, we're stuck together until I get fixed. Have you considered how long that might be? He went on since she didn't say anything. You have no idea how much I thought about it. If it never gets fixed, then we're stuck with each other until we die. You'll get better, I promised you that. That's not what I want to talk about, he replied. If it stays like this, then that will mean one of us will never follow the dreams we have. That's an if, Rias said as her lips clenched and she turned to face the Hokage monument outside the window. Just something to keep in mind. A spoiled girl wouldn't stop Naruto from becoming Hokage, whether he was stuck there forever or not. He leaned back against the couch, placed his hand on his cheek, and watched the show with a mild interest. It was getting close to noon, but they remained silent. The show ended, another one began, and Rias skipped it to watch the news. We should probably go back to your dimension now, he replied. What? However, you haven't been here in a very long time, and we just arrived. In fact, he was flattered, saying, yeah, but I don't want this. Your brother is a Satan. I practically kidnapped you, and I'd rather not do anything foolish, like start a war. It was also an order, and we'll be moving back and forth for a while. My brother will be worried. In fact, I'm surprised he hadn't shown up yet, she said, leaning back against the couch with her lips curled into a, oh. Maybe we can thank Issei for that. Perhaps my brother trusts you. Why would he put his trust in me? Because I do. Fantastic. He insulted several devils the last time he was in this mansion, so she said, let me speak to him first, he may be angry with you, as her heels clicked and clattered against the marble floor. They halted a few steps away, and after a few more, they would enter the thick oak door where her brother was. Oh, so all that about your brother trusting you? Naruto turned to face her. She looked at him and said, you know what I meant, as her face burned red. She had seen other people in the village wearing the iron plate with the leaf symbol on their foreheads. Grinning, he said, I don't. Rias turned away from him and said, just let me talk to him first. His confidence and the expression in his eyes made him dangerous. Go ahead, I'm not stopping you, Naruto said as he leaned against the wall and gazed absently at the various paintings in the corridor. Her brother looked up as Rias walked in, and then his eyes widened in surprise. Sirzek jumped out of his chair and called out his unique, obnoxious nickname for her, and before she knew it, she was in his arms. Are you alright? I've been missing you a lot. Are you in any pain? More queries came out of his mouth as a series of incomprehensible words spat out. He continued to examine her despite her response that, it's okay, I'm fine, but he found no visible injuries. He placed his hands on her shoulders and said, good, his eyes hardening into a deep frown. Now, where is this knight of yours? I want to talk to him, he said. That's why I came to speak to you, and wondering where I've been. Yes, but what's more pressing is that I want to speak to your knight. You're going to need to, because it's more complicated than you think. What's the reason for that? He scowled once more. As fast as she could, Rias added, well, as I found out, he's from another dimension altogether, and he's an important person there, and now he's representing them as a liaison. Oh, he said, blinking a few times before stepping back and placing a hand to his chin in reflection. He grimaced and paced the room, saying, yes, that would be complicating, especially after all that has happened. She recognized the other voice as they argued with each other, and they were interrupted by a dispute outside the door. Her brother walked toward the door and said, let's stop this, before it gets any messier than it needs to. I am nothing like the child that you prevailed over. Although I could apologize, I wouldn't. Furthermore, Riser was unimpressive. With a rattle and a turn of the knob, the door opened, and Naruto, still leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, and Graphia, with her hands clasped together on her lap, turned to face the intruder. He paused and said, this is over. Naruto is a visitor here and more than a member of my sister's peerage. I want to apologize, Naruto. Don't worry, she didn't know, Naruto said, waving him away. There was no harm done, and in fact, I should be the one to apologize. Then, let us discuss this inside, Sirzek said, opening the door and beckoning Naruto to join him. Graphia bowed, tightened her lips, and took a few steps back. I understand that you're a liaison, said Sirzek, who was seated behind a desk and asked them to sit down. For the Shinobi Alliance, and all the nations they are settled in. With a thoughtful expression, this seems like a big number. Do you want anything to drink? I want to apologize for what happened at your party, Naruto said, no matter what kind of tea you have. Bringing in other people to express my feelings about your sister was incredibly immature. Actually, if you could give me the chance, I would like to say that to everyone who felt offended. Well, I'm sure I can arrange that, Sirzek said, his eyes looking interested. A whole new world. That may make things more difficult. Like Ria's decision, she was unable to contain her laughter. Yes, that too. Graphia came back with a kettle and a number of cups on a tray, filled them, set them on the table for them, bowed, and waited to be called again. Rias couldn't help but observe Naruto's self-presentation, which was fearless and confident. If you want to set up a meeting with my leader, I can get that done. I see, Sirzek said. If you don't mind, I would like to have a discussion with the other Saiyans about this entire new dimension before that happens. With a nod, to be clear, our world will not experience any reincarnations of any kind. The first and only warning is that. Understandable, I'm sure we can put all mistakes behind, Sirzek said with a smile as they both stared into each other's eyes in a tense silence that seemed to be her brother trying his limits. Last thing we need is a war. Sirzek turned to her and said, yeah, but you, my dear sister, are in a strange position because of his condition. Are you okay with representing the devil race? Do you understand what I'm requesting? She answered, of course, I want to help. He turned to Naruto and said, now, I'm sure we'll find a way to remove this instability with the devil piece inside you. But she could tell by the expression in his eyes that he was not happy with her response or the circumstances. I hope so too. If you don't mind, I would like to ask questions about your own world, within reason, of course, Sirzek said. Rias was about to interrupt, but she couldn't help but think of her own conversation with the Hokage, and he realized that she would have to act as a liaison. I can do that, said Naruto. Just ask, and I'll have some food brought in if you need it. No? Okay, let's get started. There were a few interesting tidbits, mostly about Naruto's own opinions about his home, but overall the conversation was lengthy and she had heard about most of the topics they discussed, with the occasional new item. I think that should be all for now. A meeting should be done in the near future, but after I meet with the other Saiyans. Okay, whenever you're done we can talk about setting it up. Now, regarding the devils that you deceived at my party, her brother said with a nod. I would like to meet them one by one and give them an apology, or if they want, some other way that I can say sorry. It's settled then, come by tomorrow at noon, if you would excuse us, I wish a few words with my sister. Without saying anything more, Naruto got up and walked out of the room. After a few moments of silence, Searsex spoke after they clicked close. She nodded and asked, are you okay? The only thing I'm asking of you is transport him, and to be each other's guests. She said, I understand, and, pausing. The last couple of days, I've had a taste of what he felt since he arrived. I know him a little more, he says what he thinks, and he believes what he says. He doesn't tiptoe around the issue, because that doesn't lead anywhere. Do you trust him? I trust him. He saved me after all. You do know that he might have saved you because he's forced to be close to your side, he responded. Riser would likely not have allowed that. She had witnessed his treatment of others and said, I believe otherwise, he's a good person, I've seen it. Do you? He asked, pausing. Searsex pinched the bridge of his nose and said, never mind. Her brother had always been patient with her, but this time he appeared irritated. Know this, if you're hurt at all, then nothing would stop me. When Rias said, I don't think it will come to that, she was aware of his extent. She refused to tell him about it. Such a thing would not be her responsibility. After exchanging a few final words, Rias went outside with Naruto. He hid his yawn and said, well, that's settled. I don't have to do anything else today. Let's go see my peerage, explained Rias. He waited for her to continue while making a hand gesture. Back on Earth, they were in the apartment again. She faced him. Naruto, I just want to say this, my brother is a Saiyan for a reason. He's nothing like anyone you ever fought. He's much more powerful than Riser could ever be. He grinned and said, you know, I wasn't given this mission to only apologize. If it was, then someone else would be here, with a gleam in his blue eyes that seemed playful. Are you saying you can match my brother? She asked, not quite believing what she was saying, but she couldn't deny the power of negating abilities. Well, I honestly don't want to find out, and I hope I never have to. After learning what she had, that made sense. Why were you made a war hero? She asked. He turned his back and said, I fought, just like everyone else. What should we tell my peerage? She asked, shifting the conversation. Tell them, I told my friends. He sat next to her and watched while she settled into a couch and switched on the TV. She was so absorbed in her thoughts that she ignored the program. It's going to be busy for us in the next week. Yep, maybe longer than that. Although this was more important than school, maybe she could get the next assignment. She glanced at Naruto and realized that he would not be able to live here. He had made up his mind already. There was simply two. She seemed to be so full of things that she should take a shower right now. What soothed him? Would you like some ice cream? Rias inquired. As long as it was distracting, it didn't matter what they got. He sat motionless on the seat without responding. Only the shifting images were reflected in his eyes. It was unnatural. He was eerily motionless. His mouth shattered the mask. I just forgot something. What's the matter? He trembled and pressed his lips together. I forgot the old man's ramen, he said, burying his hands in them. Rias couldn't help but laugh as she stared in stunned silence. Would you like to return for it? I wouldn't mind. He let out a sigh and looked around the room as if he was debating something inside of himself. You wouldn't mind if we stayed at my place for one more day, right? No, of course not, he smiled as his eyes, which were already brilliant, glowed. As they sped by, there was a blur of people and the shuffling of feet. He went unnoticed by many, but those who did spoke in low tones and with wide eyes. Their freedom to do as they pleased with perhaps trivial concerns made Naruto envious. In the meantime, he was unable to leave the school premises without becoming a monster. He hadn't been here long, fortunately. It's amazing how a week has passed. It had crawled like a sickly little snail, not that it was short. With the amount of time he had been given to finish everything, including the conclusion of the 5-cage meeting, there wasn't much time for leisure. Senpai, said a person sitting next to him. It was Issei, a reminder that he hardly ever had the opportunity to speak to anyone, let alone the other members of Rias' peerage. All that jazz didn't qualify as interaction, and they gave an explanation of what had transpired since their return. Issei, Rias wanted to be here, so he was in school and involved in important diplomatic negotiations. He would have to attend another dinner later tonight, but he would much rather speak with Issei than go to another one. Have you come to talk about what's good in the world? Hey, no need to say it, I already know it. Maybe you got somewhere, maybe you didn't. Though he wasn't sure if he should tell Issei, he did notice one of Rias' breasts. In addition to her apparent propensity to sleep naked. Because of Issei's own inclinations, not because he wanted it to remain a secret. Issei asserted, there's always goodness in the world. He saw a girl sprint down the corridor. You were from another place? He asked, glancing at him. Yep, he scowled while ignoring nothing. Slowly, he spoke again. How many places are there? After a few days, he had grown tired of this political jargon. No idea. Rias and all the devils didn't know, that's why it's such a big deal. He said, so, you lied to me about being normal, which was practically a question. Naruto gave a shrug. If you want to put it that way, sure, but what's normal for me is back home. A village filled with ninjas, nearly all my friends are in the same career path. Plus, we don't live forever either. I see, said Issei. There was a strange lull in his question, as if he wasn't sure about his curse. I wanted to ask another question, are there any hot girls over there? Naruto repeatedly tapped his fingers, saying, I expected that this time. I was thinking about Issei's hesitation. Issei went on talking, but Naruto barely listened. I wonder, do you think? Brought Naruto in. Being home, it made me think of my past and future. I realized something, everyone else knew of the supernatural world, except you, maybe you thought I was the same. You wanted very much to be my friend, despite me stealing Rias away. What are you getting at? Issei turned his head away and gripped the table tightly. You hate being a devil, or however you want to put it. Both of us died, with hardly any choice of being resurrected. I buried myself in my anger, and laid it into Rias. You dealt with it by burying it into boobs. Issei said, but she remained silent. His hands were wrung together. It reminded him of the awful loneliness he had experienced as a child. We all handle things differently. While I'm not normal in the way you wanted, it doesn't mean my life hadn't changed, he said. I died, mumbled Issei. He had a blank expression. You died, Naruto said once more. He couldn't help but think of something else, so he smiled. That was not a good time. Fortunately, Issei was unaware of it. With the number of students in the hallways reduced to a trickle, they sat in prolonged silence. Clubroom? Asked Naruto. They walked outside without saying anything. Less subdued, Issei finally broke the silence. You must have been busy, I barely saw you or Bucko since you returned and explained what was happening. You're on the dot, meetings and meetings every day, eat, get weirded out by Rias, sleep, and then again the next day, Naruto shrugged, unconcerned by the shift in topic. Why? I'm a liaison, besides, I insulted all those devils at the party, I have to deal with that. Issei grinned. That was pretty funny, I think some of the others thought the same. What kind of, as you put it, ass kissing did you have to do? Naruto had to question whether Searsex had assisted in the background. Just apologizing, like for offending them, how it was immature, or if there's something I can do to make up for it, he said. A leader would have made the process run more smoothly. Issei hummed, so being a liaison for your own world, how is it? As they rounded the corner. Though, there was this one thing, Naruto said, placing a thumb to his chin. A little boring. What? Noble, wanted more than an apology, he wanted me to kiss his feet, replied Naruto. Issei chuckled, I told him to go fuck himself, that was the main idea, though it was simplified. He didn't need to be aware of the intricacies of the story, the details simply destroyed it. What about you? Inquired Naruto. How has it been? My life isn't as interesting as yours right now. Oh please. All this other crap is just making me sick, give me some of yours, anything. Anything you've seen, or heard. Well, some guy tried to fight me some days ago, Issei spoke in a whisper. It didn't go well, and seeing how strong you are, it made me want to train. That's good, Naruto glanced at him and asked, are you sure you can't help me? Right? Everyone else appeared to be inside the club room when they did. As well as the new girl, whose name he couldn't recall. He took a seat next to Akano on the closest seat. The table was piled high with folders and papers. On each pile, Rias placed sticky notes and arranged them according to week and class. He participated in a brief conversation regarding the activities he and Rias had been engaged in over the past week. There is nothing more intriguing than that. He thought about his mission most of the time. His sides stirred, and Akano stepped forward, leaning into his ear while folding her legs. There's something different between the two of you, almost as if you're closer. You're staring at her more often. Am I? Nothing unusual, but it's different, this stifled giggle said. Oh really? He said, rolling his eyes. Are you falling in love with her? That's like, the stupidest thing I ever heard. She chuckled once more. How cute, maybe you're in denial. She always tells me how exhausted she is on the phone almost every night. He had never listened to them, but he had heard them. He felt her breath slide down his neck as Akano leaned closer, her hand lightly gripping his arm. You're fucking her, aren't you? She said quietly. Wow, surprised me once more. All he could hear was the repetition of that sentence in his mind. Raw and hushed, she had rolled the word. The image was so clear in his mind that he couldn't help but shiver. Naruto whispered, I kind of hate her if you don't remember. She twirled a strand of her dark hair while giggling. He heard her breath shiver and her body coil against his, and he said, you know, she told me you can heal your wounds. What's that got to with anything? Are you rough? I'd enjoy that. He was hot. This was becoming intense, and his discomfort and annoyance were increasing by the second. It felt more obscene than ever as he hissed back into her ear, we didn't bang, okay? I believe you, she said with a laugh. He blinked and saw that everyone else in the room was staring at them. He was very happy that she enjoyed him. Even though he was annoyed, the whole situation was entertaining. It was as easy as a lovely girl putting her hand around his arm and grinning at him. Whispering, well, there's a solution to your woes, she said, observing the other people who looked at them. Grinning, he said, oh, and what's that? It was his turn to turn his head away. His gaze landed on Rias, who appeared irritated, shoulders stiffening before sagging. Well, he said with a chuckle, you just need to be close to someone, then hummed. And you know what happens when a man and a woman get together. Huh, he uttered foolishly. That actually makes a lot of sense, he said, his thoughts going blank. In a funny way, it was a good idea. He would call out that he had come home, the door would click open, a key would be turned, and someone would answer. Who would do that, though? The lifespan would not be feasible. His vision turned red, and when he looked up, Rias was there. I think it's time we get ready, right? She frowned, her lips pressed firmly together. Yeah, sure, he said as he rose. Bye you too, Akano sang with a smile. They left through the door and returned to the school's premises. Akano wasn't who he first believed him to be. Her words were curt. We have to go to the store first, to get a few things, however. Sure, he kept up, paying little attention. Out into the streets and beyond the school gate. Despite their extensive conversation, Naruto didn't feel particularly inclined to speak with Rias. He then listened to music while wearing his headphones. He let himself be mesmerized by the melodies. He just went down the street after the red hair. They walked side by side, with Rias setting the pace. She led him by taking a few steps ahead of him. Sometimes she would look back, gaze, and then think again. Nothing out of the ordinary. They eventually came to a stop, and she muttered something about going inside while he muttered something about waiting. He watched the cars go by while leaning against the wall. You're a hard person to find, with the music blasting into his ears. Naruto gazed at his phone. Perhaps they spoke to someone else, but he heard the voice. Naturally, the individual who made the statement was by themselves, standing a few feet away. A teenager with white hair. Something about it seemed familiar, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. For a full week, and I found nothing at all. You disappeared off the face of the planet, gone with that other devil. Naruto glanced around and noticed that nobody was using the city's open sidewalk. Rias stood in line at the register inside the store. He turned to face the stranger, who they referred to as Supernatural. And you are? A grin, Valley, I took that weakling from you, Naruto said, right, rolling the word. I'm Naruto, is there something you wanted? He said, crossing his arms and placing the headphones behind his neck. This was fortunate because the individual in question was a member of the Fallen Angels. Naruto had attempted to come up with ways to communicate with them. It was more of a bonus than a component of his mission. A giggle, tell me, was it as easy as it looked? And that golden form, what about that? I can't seem to find anything about it, and that's the strangest part. Those are just details. Why were you looking for me? Shrugged Naruto. A couple of reasons, because I was asked, and because I wanted to. Just get to the point, you're with the Fallen Angels, aren't you? I guess, but I came here to fight you, shrugged Valley. I'd rather not fight, it's not a request, he said, his brow quivering. I can always just run, and I'd rather avoid a war. Valley declared, I'm a devil, there won't be a war. Fallen Angels with a devil? I'm with an entirely new group, faction, race, whatever you want to call it. She sighed, I don't care about all these groups and their petty squabbles. Were conversations always such a pain to endure? Then let's work together. You introduce me to whoever the leader of the fallen angels is, and sure, I'll fight you, he said, gritting his teeth and swallowing an inappropriate statement. Sure, that's a deal, he said with a laugh. Yeah, but Rias will have to come, trust me, you don't want the fight interrupted. He crossed his own arms and scowled. Fine. As she left the store, Naruto took hold of her wrist. She looked inquisitively. His words, we're doing something. She saw someone she had seen at Kokebil's fall when she blinked. The odd youngster who had captured the fallen angel. Naruto declared, this is Rias, and this is Valley. You got a place for it, right? All Valley could do was nod. One of the seals emerged from below as they approached him. Somewhere in a forest, they showed up. A broad meadow, lush and green. The distant rumble of civilization reached her ears. Naruto led her away from Valley while keeping his hand tight around her wrist. He fixed his gaze on Naruto's back. He suddenly picked her up and they flew to a small cliff that was no higher than the trees. Before she could ask, he answered, setting her down. I'm fighting him. Stay here, okay? Nothing serious anyway. He didn't understand a word she said. Leaping to his feet, he joined Valley. Rias listened intently to their conversation, but all she could make out was Naruto stating where she was placed. They halted and shifted against each other before she could attempt to hear more. There was a rush of arm-to-arm fighting. Whether any of them got a good hit or not was uncertain to her. Naruto was cast into the brush and thrown away. Birds flew in the air, singing and cawing in panic. Wringing her hands together, Rias felt her pace quicken and looked around for a better view. When Naruto reappeared, they started to move even more quickly, as though they were testing each other. Someone laughed. As Naruto delivered a series of effective blows and the stranger stumbled back, she applauded. One more chuckle. They engaged in combat once more before vanishing into the dense brush and trees. Struggling to locate them, Rias followed the sounds of their collision as she walked along the edge. Pebbles and earth fell beneath her feet as the ground rumbled beneath them. Once more, they appeared. They looked at each other as Valley spoke again. Now, where's that golden form of yours? Curiosity taking hold, Rias leaned closer. Even when she asked, he never mentioned it much. If it comes to it, said an offended Valley. They resumed their conversation, their tempo increasing with each heartbeat. Their feet and fists were fading into obscurity. She heard their cries, but they vanished once more, lost somewhere below. Show me that thing. What? Trees cracked and moaned as the ground shook. She mumbled, they're getting more serious. She wanted to know what Naruto's strength was. Was the power of the gold form transient? Was it limited to bursts? The number of questions was excessive? The stranger cursed, and Rias heard. There was a lull in the fighting, an unsettling respite from the mayhem. Unaware that she had been holding her breath, she let it out. Valley was standing at the spot where something tore through the rock close to her. He closed the distance as icy eyes gazed at her. He moved so quickly, she was unable to respond in time. Rias blinked. The golden shroud on Naruto. A hand reached out and landed in Valley's stomach. A drop of perspiration trickled down Valley's forehead. His skin and clothes were crawled with thick black lines. Naruto took a step back, and the golden face vanished. We're not doing this anymore. Valley collapsed to the ground. He spoke with difficulty. Not finished, he gasped, his arm shaking. Naruto looked at her and said, I don't care if you were only using her as bait, let's go. Rias gave him a dumb nod while staring at him. As they vanished, Valley groaned in frustration. They went back to their shared apartment, another change of scenery. She became aware that she had misplaced her bag at that moment. But Naruto was the main focus of her mind. He had his back to us. When she heard a pop, he moaned and stretched. I wish I can relax, too bad we gotta visit some other devil. Rias made the decision to speak without thinking. What was that about? Valley? He inquired. He got a drink from the refrigerator. He wanted a spar, but he was getting pissed. I guess because he wanted me to show more. He noticed her staring for a moment and returned the gaze. Rias was still unable to express herself. The intense expression in his blue eyes also confused it. You know, I'm getting tired of your constant staring, he said. Red in the face, Rias turned her attention to the more intriguing rug beneath her feet. The words, why? You noticed that? Sounded in her heart. I thought you weren't hiding it. Do you sneak glances at me? And why would I do that? Mumbling, I don't know, she said. With her hands clasped together, she experienced a surge of hope. The day was peculiar. Whatever, Let's get this business over with, okay?
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.